Hello, and welcome to the Sleepy Brainist, a gentle place where wonder and wisdom meet rest and reflection. Tonight, we're taking a peaceful journey into one of the most mysterious and powerful forces within you. Your subconscious mind. It's always awake, always listening, quietly guiding your thoughts, habits, memories, and dreams. Even while you sleep, it's at work, helping you heal, solve problems, and shape the life you live. So as you begin to relax, let your breath slow down and let your eyes grow heavy. Tell me, where in the world are you watching from tonight? Whether you're in a quiet city apartment, a cozy countryside cabin, or somewhere oceans away, you are warmly welcome here. Now, let's drift into the quiet world within you. Somewhere just beneath the surface of your awareness, a quiet companion has always been with you. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but it is always there, watching, guiding, and softly nudging you through every moment of your life. This companion doesn't speak in words, it whispers in feelings, sensations, patterns, little nudges and instincts that seem to come from nowhere, and yet, somehow, they shape everything. This is your subconscious mind. It does not need the spotlight. In fact, it prefers to stay in the background, silent, unseen, yet always awake. While your conscious mind gets tired and falls asleep, your subconscious mind keeps working, endlessly, tirelessly, devotedly. It's the ever-present background hum that never turns off. From the moment you were born, and even before that, your subconscious was learning, absorbing, remembering, like a sponge soaking in the rhythm of your mother's heartbeat, the sound of voices around you, the warmth of comfort, the sting of fear. Long before you ever spoke your first word, your subconscious had already started building the blueprint of who you would become. It learned what made you feel safe and what made you afraid. It began to organize the world into familiar patterns, helping you predict, prepare, and protect. You see, your subconscious mind doesn't operate with language or logic. It works with impressions, with sensations, with images, habits, and the emotional echoes of every experience you've ever had. If your conscious mind is the sailor steering the ship, your subconscious is the vast ocean beneath it, powerful, deep, and largely unknown. And while your conscious mind is limited, able to hold only a few thoughts at a time, your subconscious holds multitudes. It manages your breathing without you thinking. It regulates your heartbeat, your digestion, your posture, even the way your eyes move when you dream, every moment without asking for thanks. It stores your memories, not just the ones you can recall, but also the ones you've forgotten, or perhaps never realized you encoded in the first place. A smell, a sound, or the light at a certain hour of the day might suddenly awaken something inside you, a memory long buried, suddenly alive again. That's your subconscious, always listening, always storing. It also shapes your habits, those automatic behaviors you repeat without even thinking. The way you tie your shoes, brush your teeth, or reach for your phone without realizing it. These little actions, repeated daily, are your subconscious mind at work, carrying out the programs it has learned. But it's not just habits. It's beliefs, feelings, fears, hopes, your sense of self, your understanding of love, all gently wrapped into layers of quiet programming that run in the background. Scripts written by experience, emotion, and repetition. Even when you try to change something about yourself, your subconscious mind may resist, not because it's trying to sabotage you, but because it's trying to protect you. It holds tightly to what it knows, what is familiar, what has kept you safe in the past, even if it no longer serves you now. And yet, within that same resistance lies enormous potential. Because once you begin to understand this hidden part of you, once you approach it with kindness, patience, and curiosity, the subconscious becomes not an obstacle, but a doorway. A doorway to deep transformation. It responds not to force, but to repetition. Not to logic, but to emotion. When you feel something deeply, when you visualize it, affirm it, believe it, your subconscious listens. It listens with wide, attentive ears. It is like a child who has been given the job of guarding your inner world and will keep doing what it has been taught unless you gently, lovingly show it something new. And so, as we begin this journey deeper into the hidden power of your mind, allow yourself to marvel at what's been working beneath your awareness all along. Your subconscious mind is not a mystery to fear, but a friend to understand. It is not a force to conquer, but a garden to tend. It holds within it every pattern, every memory, every instinct that makes you you. And as you sleep, it continues to evolve, change, and adapt. So rest easy tonight, knowing that while your eyes close and your breath slows, your subconscious is there, quietly shaping the next version of yourself, one gentle thought at a time. Imagine your mind as a great landscape. At the surface, there are clear skies, moving clouds, and the hum of your everyday thoughts. That's your conscious mind, the part of you that observes, analyzes, and speaks in words. But just beneath that sky lies a vast and fertile garden, rich with life, color, and quiet power. This garden is your subconscious mind. It stretches far and wide, deeper than memory, older than language, and full of seeds planted long ago. Some were sown in childhood, others were buried more recently, without you even realizing it. But all of them continue to grow. Some seeds sprout into beautiful things: confidence, kindness, resilience, joy. Others grow into tangled vines of doubt, fear, or self-protection. And still others lie dormant, waiting for just the right moment, the right environment, to bloom. The subconscious garden is always in motion, even when you're still. It doesn't wait for your permission to grow. Thoughts become beliefs. Beliefs become habits. Habits become reality. And yet, it all begins with a simple seed, planted by experience, watered by repetition, and bathed in emotion. Perhaps a teacher once told you that you weren't good at something, or maybe someone you loved gave you the silent message that you weren't enough. Those moments may have passed long ago, but the feelings they carried sank deep into the soil of your subconscious. Over time, they may have grown unnoticed, quiet roots wrapping around your confidence, shaping the way you walk into a room, the way you speak to yourself, the things you dare to try. But just as a garden can grow wild and unkempt, it can also be nurtured, lovingly, patiently, gently restored. The subconscious doesn't resist change because it is stubborn. It resists because it is protective. Like soft earth packed down over time, it has learned what to grow and what to keep hidden. It clings to the familiar, not because it's the best, but because it feels safest. And yet, the moment you bring awareness to this garden, something begins to shift. Awareness is like sunlight, repetition is like rain, emotion is like warmth. Together, they begin to soften the hardened ground and awaken the seeds that have long slept beneath it. Perhaps you want to become more confident, more creative, more peaceful. That desire is the first sign that something deep within is ready to grow. The garden is always listening. It hears every thought you repeat, every belief you feed, every feeling you hold close. The subconscious does not judge. It does not ask whether a seed is helpful or harmful. It simply says, yes, to whatever you plant. And this is why it is so powerful. If you tell yourself, I am not good enough, your subconscious says yes and grows that belief into your daily actions. But if you begin to say, I am learning to trust myself, even softly, even uncertainly, your subconscious hears that too, and it begins to shift, slowly, quietly, like a flower turning toward the sun. There is no need to force change in this inner garden, no need to rip out old roots or dig too fast. That only unsettles the soil. Instead, change comes gently, with soft intentions, with kind words, with consistent tending. Each time you pause and breathe deeply, each time you imagine a more peaceful version of yourself, each time you say something loving in your own mind, you are tending this garden. You are creating the space for something new to grow. And growth doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's a small thought that no longer carries fear, a choice made with calm instead of panic, a moment of rest without guilt. These are signs that the garden is changing, that something buried long ago has now begun to bloom. So as you lie back tonight, breathing gently, resting deeper, picture that inner garden within you, spacious, quiet, alive. Let it be a peaceful place, a place where you are safe to change, a place where old fears can fall like autumn leaves, and new growth can rise like soft green shoots in spring. There is no rush, there is no judgment, there is only this moment, and the quiet miracle of something inside you starting to grow again. Let your breath be the breeze that moves through this garden. Let your heart be the sun that warms the soil. Let your dreams be the water that brings new life. Everything you need is already within you. And tonight, it is blooming. Words are how we talk to the world, but your subconscious, it listens in a different way. It doesn't understand long explanations or clever arguments. It doesn't analyze. It feels. It responds to the emotional flavor of your experiences, those quiet waves of meaning that settle beneath language. To speak to your subconscious is to speak in the language of symbols and feelings. Think about how a single image can stir something deep within you. The sight of a child holding their parent's hand, a full moon casting silver light across a calm lake, a candle flickering in a dark room. You don't need words to explain what those things mean. You just feel something. That's the language your subconscious understands best. It is the mind beneath language, the part of you that was active before you ever learned to speak, and the part that will remain active long after words grow quiet. Symbols are the subconscious mind's alphabet. They are the images, sounds, smells, and sensations that bypass logic and speak directly to the heart of who you are. A certain song might bring tears to your eyes, and you may not know why. A scent might comfort you or make you uneasy, because long ago it was tied to something important, something emotional, something buried. Your conscious mind may forget the details, but your subconscious never does. That's why you may find yourself drawn to certain colors, certain shapes, certain dreams or fears. It's not random. These symbols carry meaning for you, even if you can't explain it. Feelings, too, are central to this inner language. Emotions are like messengers, arriving with news from deep within, but often we push them aside. We try to think our way through them, to reason with them, to silence them. But feelings aren't meant to be silenced. They are meant to be felt, to be honored, to be heard. When you allow yourself to fully feel something, even discomfort, you send a message to your subconscious. I am listening. And when your subconscious feels heard, it softens, it opens, it begins to shift. This is why visualization can be so powerful. When you vividly picture something, whether it's a peaceful forest, a joyful moment, or a future goal, you are using the native language of the subconscious. It doesn't care if something is real or imagined. If it's felt deeply enough, it begins to plant that experience as a seed of truth. The subconscious also communicates through metaphor, through the symbols that appear in your dreams, your fantasies, your art, your intuitions. That recurring image that keeps returning to you, that place in your imagination you keep revisiting. It may hold more truth than any sentence you've spoken. And so, to connect with your subconscious mind, you don't need to say much at all. You just need to feel, to visualize, to imagine with emotion, to let go of logic for a little while and step into the soft world of symbols. This is how rituals work, not because of the exact words spoken, but because of the feeling they evoke. Lighting a candle, repeating an affirmation, holding a quiet moment with your hand on your heart. These actions may seem simple to the conscious mind, but to the subconscious, they are rich with meaning. They are symbols of safety, symbols of change, symbols of intention. And in the symbolic world of the subconscious, intention is everything. If you approach your inner mind with fear, it will mirror fear. If you approach it with gentleness, it will reflect that back to you. What you send inward becomes the shape of what grows. This is why kindness to yourself matters, not just as a nice idea, but as a language your subconscious understands. When you soothe yourself, when you offer your inner world comfort instead of criticism, you are changing the entire tone of that conversation. So even now, as you lie here listening, your subconscious is hearing more than the words. It's absorbing the rhythm, the tone, the feeling behind them. It's watching for symbols, for warmth, for images it can understand and use, and it's always listening, even now, especially now, in the quiet hours of the night, when the world slows and the body softens into rest. Something mysterious begins to stir. As your conscious mind gently drifts away, a new landscape begins to unfold. A landscape shaped not by logic or control, but by the deep currents of your subconscious. This is the realm of dreams. Dreams are not random. They are not meaningless flickers of the mind. They are messages in motion, flowing from the deepest part of you, painted in symbols, colored by emotion, guided by memories you may not even remember you have. In the world of dreams, time bends, logic dissolves, the ordinary becomes extraordinary, and yet everything has meaning. A door that will not open, a familiar place you've never seen, a face you miss, smiling at you once more. These aren't just fragments, they are metaphors from your subconscious, coded reflections of your inner world. When you dream, your subconscious has the stage all to itself. Free from the noise of daytime thought, it begins to sort, sift, and process. It weaves together pieces of memory, sensation, desire, and fear, stitching them into stories that only it could tell. Sometimes those stories seem strange. Other times, they feel profoundly real. So real that you wake up with your heart racing or your cheeks wet with tears. Even when your conscious mind forgets a dream the moment you wake, your subconscious remembers. It stores the emotion, the imagery, the lesson, and slowly, in ways you may not notice, those dreams begin to shape your waking life. You may feel differently about a problem that once seemed overwhelming. You may gain clarity about a decision. You may suddenly notice something in yourself that had long gone unseen. Dreams have a way of showing us what we're not yet ready to face in daylight, and yet need to understand. They can reveal long-buried pain that's asking to be healed. They can stir creative ideas from the quiet corners of the mind. They can offer closure where waking life has left a door open too long. And sometimes they whisper truths we've hidden from ourselves, truths wrapped in symbolism, delivered with tenderness. You don't need to interpret every dream to receive its gift. Sometimes, just remembering a single image is enough to bring something unconscious into the light. A river, a house, a path in the woods. Let it linger. Let it speak in its own language. Your subconscious knows what it means, even if your conscious mind never fully does. And if you return to the same dream again and again, it is no accident. Recurring dreams are like gentle taps on the shoulder. The subconscious is repeating itself, not to annoy you, but to be heard. It is saying softly, there is something here you need to feel, something here you need to see. There is no dream too strange to matter, no image too small to carry meaning. The subconscious speaks in this way because it must. It cannot always use words. It speaks through the landscapes it builds behind your closed eyes, in that quiet space where you are both present and free. Even nightmares have their purpose. They are not punishments, but protectors, parts of your mind trying to release what's trapped, trying to warn, trying to express what your waking self may have pushed away. And when approached gently, even the most disturbing dream can begin to soften. It can be understood, held, soothed. Some people keep a dream journal beside their bed, not to analyze, but simply to witness, to honor the dream world with attention, to say, I'm listening. And often, the more you listen, the louder the messages become, not in volume, but in clarity. A shift occurs. The veil between waking and dreaming grows thinner. Intuition sharpens. Creative sparks return. Emotional blocks begin to move. You begin to realize that your subconscious is always talking to you. It speaks not just at night, but throughout the day, in memories that bubble up for no reason, in sudden emotions, in gut feelings that can't be explained. But in dreams, its voice is purest. It's unfiltered, it's raw, and it's real. It's where the deepest parts of you come forward, not to scare you, but to guide you home to yourself. And as your body rests and your breath slows, the door to this world begins to open again, just a little wider. When you were very young, perhaps too young to remember, your mind was wide open. You were like a sponge, absorbing the world around you with no filter, no resistance. Every smile, every frown, every word spoken to you or around you left a mark. It didn't need to be repeated many times. Once was often enough. In these early years, your subconscious was in its most impressionable state. Like wet clay, it took on the shape of your experiences and held onto them. And the impressions made during this time didn't just stay as memories. They became part of your foundation. They helped shape the way you see yourself, others, and the world, not consciously, not with thought, but subtly, quietly, deeply. If someone gave you love when you cried, your subconscious may have learned, I am safe when I express my needs. If instead you were ignored, scolded, or left to comfort yourself, your subconscious might have learned a very different message. It's not safe to ask for help, or my feelings are too much. These lessons, picked up without words, without explanation, form the unspoken rules your subconscious lives by. They become the emotional blueprint you carry into adulthood. You may not remember why you fear rejection so much, or why you always try to please others, or why you feel anxious when things get quiet. But somewhere, long ago, your subconscious learned those patterns. And because it believes it's protecting you, it holds onto them tightly. This is how your early environment becomes the voice inside your head. It's not just the big moments that shape you. It's the small, everyday interactions, the tone of voice used by your caregivers, the way conflict was handled or avoided, the amount of touch and attention you received. These subtle signals sink deep, forming what psychologists sometimes call core beliefs. But your subconscious doesn't call them beliefs. It simply treats them as facts, as the way life is, as the way you are. If you were praised only when you achieved something, your subconscious might now associate your worth with performance. If you were made to feel like a burden, you may now feel uncomfortable when others give you attention or support. These patterns run quietly in the background, shaping your decisions, your relationships, and even your sense of identity. And because they were learned so early, they can be difficult to recognize. You may go through life repeating a pattern, unsure why you're doing it, feeling frustrated by it, and still unable to stop. But once you begin to understand that your subconscious is not broken, only programmed, only following the rules it learned long ago, a kind of compassion begins to emerge. You realize that the parts of you that feel anxious, avoidant, reactive, or small are not flaws. They are protective adaptations. Your subconscious mind is always trying to help you, even when it creates limitations. It's doing the best it can with what it was taught. This is why inner work often brings us back to childhood, not to dwell, not to blame, but to understand, to revisit those early messages, to ask gently, is this still true? Is this still helpful? Is this belief keeping me safe or keeping me small? And sometimes, all it takes is seeing the old pattern for what it is. The moment you name it, something begins to soften. You are no longer under its spell. You begin to rewrite the script. Because the beautiful truth is this: your subconscious is not fixed. It is changeable, malleable, always listening. Even the oldest patterns can shift with patience, repetition, and care. You can teach your inner mind new truths. You can show it through experience and practice that safety is possible in new ways, that love can be gentle, that rest is allowed, that you are not what happened to you. Your inner child still lives within you, not as a memory, but as a feeling, as a posture, as a part of your subconscious that still wants to be seen. And when you meet that part of yourself with love instead of judgment, when you offer it the words it needed to hear all those years ago, a quiet healing begins. It doesn't happen all at once. It happens slowly, in the way you speak to yourself, in the way you respond to discomfort, in the way you breathe when fear rises, in the way you allow space for your feelings instead of running from them. And as you practice this more and more, your subconscious begins to rewire itself. It begins to loosen its grip on outdated beliefs. It begins to trust that the world might not be so dangerous anymore. That maybe, just maybe, the things that once hurt you don't have to define you forever. It's not about forgetting the past. It's about tending to the roots it left behind, so that something new can grow where fear once lived. So that each time you respond to yourself with kindness instead of criticism, a new message is planted. And slowly, those messages become the new blueprint. Beneath every word you speak and every thought you consciously think, there exists a vast and quiet archive, an intricate network of moments, sensations, and details your subconscious has recorded, stored, and catalogued without you even realizing. Unlike your conscious memory, which is selective and sometimes fragile, your subconscious memory is expansive. It remembers everything. Not in the way you might imagine, like files in a cabinet or scenes from a film you can easily rewind. The subconscious stores memories in layers, woven through emotions, connected through associations, wrapped in the sensations of the body. A particular smell might suddenly stir a feeling you haven't felt in years. A sound, a texture, even the quality of light on a certain day can transport you somewhere else entirely. Not because your conscious mind recalls it, but because your subconscious never let it go. Even experiences you didn't fully understand at the time, especially those, were absorbed. Children, for example, may not have the language to describe what's happening around them, but their subconscious still records the emotional tone, the body language, the energetic atmosphere. It remembers how safe or unsafe something felt. It remembers what brought comfort and what brought confusion. It remembers what was repeated and what was forbidden. This is how so much of your present experience is shaped by the past, even when you're not aware of it. When you enter a room and suddenly feel anxious without knowing why. When someone uses a certain tone of voice and your chest tightens. When you hold back your opinion even though you know it matters. These reactions aren't always logical. They don't originate in the conscious mind. They are echoes, subconscious echoes of memories stored long ago. And yet, the subconscious is not simply a vault for pain or fear. It's also a guardian of joy, curiosity, and connection. It remembers the first time you felt genuinely seen, the warmth of a hug that made everything okay, the sound of someone calling your name with love. These moments, though they may seem small, are alive within you. They shape the way you form relationships, the way you give and receive love, the way you move through the world. Your subconscious uses these stored memories like a compass. When something feels familiar, whether good or bad, it sends signals to your body. You might get a burst of excitement, a wave of dread, or a deep sense of calm. Often you don't even know where the feeling is coming from, but your subconscious does. It's comparing the present to the past, asking, have I felt this before? Is this safe? Is this dangerous? Is this something I should move toward or move away from? That's why sometimes change can feel threatening even when it's good. If your subconscious has learned that certain things, like success, vulnerability, or rest, were followed by pain or judgment in the past, it may now associate them with danger, and so it resists. Not because it wants to sabotage you, but because it remembers what your conscious mind may have forgotten. But this memory system can be influenced. It's not fixed. The subconscious mind learns through repetition, especially repetition paired with emotion. If you begin to pair new experiences with safety, like speaking up and being met with kindness, or resting without guilt, or receiving praise without shame, your subconscious begins to rewrite its associations. Over time, those old triggers lose their grip. That tone of voice no longer causes fear. That room no longer feels dangerous. That situation no longer pulls you into a spiral. Your body responds differently because the memory attached to that experience has been softened, reshaped. And sometimes, a deep memory may rise to the surface suddenly, brought forth by a scent, a dream, or a conversation. In those moments, your subconscious is offering you something, not to overwhelm you, but to free you, to say, this is still here. Will you sit with it now? Will you feel it and let it move through? Even if the memory is incomplete, even if it comes only in fragments, it carries weight. It matters. It is part of your inner library, asking to be read with compassion instead of fear. You don't have to remember every detail to heal. You don't have to relive everything. Sometimes, just honoring the emotional imprint is enough. Naming the feeling, breathing into it, offering it the safety that might have been missing the first time. Because when the subconscious feels heard, truly heard, it begins to relax. It loosens its grip on the past. It opens space for something new. And that space is where transformation begins to take root. There is a quiet force working inside you every day, shaping what you believe is possible, determining what you reach for, and even influencing how you see yourself. It does this not by shouting, but by repeating, softly, consistently, over time. Your subconscious mind learns through repetition, not through logic, not through force, but through what it hears and experiences again and again. And what is repeated, whether helpful or harmful, eventually becomes truth to the subconscious. It doesn't question what is said or done over and over. It absorbs it, accepts it, and begins to weave it into the very structure of who you think you are. If you've heard something often enough, especially when you were young or emotionally open, your subconscious may have built an identity around it. I'm not good enough. I'm too much. I always mess things up. These phrases, once heard repeatedly, may be spoken by others, or may be spoken silently to yourself, can dig deep grooves in the mind, not because they're true, but because they've been repeated. And the subconscious does not analyze what it stores. It doesn't evaluate whether something is kind, fair, or accurate. It doesn't ask if the people who said those things were wise or wounded themselves. It simply takes repetition as proof. But the power of repetition cuts both ways. Just as harmful patterns can take root through repeated exposure, healing patterns can take root the same way. You can speak new words, new truths, new images into your inner mind, not with the expectation that they'll take hold instantly, but knowing that the subconscious responds to familiarity. It learns not from dramatic declarations, but from gentle, steady presence. When you begin to repeat a new thought, something life-affirming, soft, kind, it may feel foreign at first, even fake. If you've spent years telling yourself the opposite, your subconscious will resist at first, not out of cruelty, but out of habit. It's trying to keep you within the boundaries it believes are safe. But if you continue, if you speak to yourself with kindness every day, if you visualize the person you're becoming, if you plant the same gentle idea again and again, eventually the soil begins to change. The mind begins to accept this new input as the new truth. And this is how transformation happens, not in a moment of force, but in a series of small, repeated offerings. A new belief spoken each morning, a breath taken before reacting, a single act of self-trust. Over time, these become part of the internal rhythm. They begin to echo more loudly than the old beliefs. The subconscious starts to prefer them because they've become the new familiar. This is the hidden power of mantras, affirmations, and visualization. When spoken or imagined with feeling and repeated over and over, they begin to overwrite the older, limiting programs. Not by erasing the past, but by building new pathways beside it, new options, new meanings. But repetition alone isn't enough. The subconscious listens most closely when repetition is paired with emotion. If you say an affirmation flatly, without connection, it may not land. But if you say it while placing your hand on your heart, while breathing slowly, while imagining something vivid, it sinks deeper. The subconscious pays attention when something feels real. Emotion is the glue that makes repetition stick. This is also why repeated emotional experiences carry so much weight. If you were repeatedly shamed when you spoke your truth, your subconscious may now associate self-expression with danger. But if you now begin to speak your truth in safe spaces, and you're met with understanding or support, and you do this again and again, your subconscious begins to rewire its expectation. Over time, the new pattern becomes stronger than the old one, It becomes the new normal. So much of healing is not about dramatic breakthroughs. It's about gentle, intentional repetition, choosing to show up for yourself again and again, offering your inner mind new messages, even when it resists, especially when it resists. And the more often you repeat something aligned with your true self, your calmness, your power, your softness, your worth, the more your subconscious adapts. It starts to believe, it starts to cooperate, it starts to help. Because once it learns a new pattern, the subconscious doesn't need to be micromanaged. It starts to run that new program in the background, just like it did with the old ones. It begins to build your habits, your posture, your tone of voice, your choices around this new belief. And then the world around you begins to respond to the new signals you're sending out. There is something extraordinary that happens while you sleep, long after your conscious thoughts have faded into the background, after your muscles have softened, your breath has slowed, and the day has let go of you. Something deeper begins to stir. A quiet, hidden process begins to unfold, one that doesn't require effort or awareness. It happens on its own, in silence, under the surface. This is when your subconscious becomes most receptive. This is when the seeds of change are most easily planted. Throughout the day, your conscious mind is like a gatekeeper, filtering, analyzing, comparing, controlling. But at night, especially just as you're falling asleep, and again just before you wake, that gate begins to loosen. In these liminal moments, known as hypnagogic and hypnopompic states, your brain waves shift into slower, more open frequencies. This is where the subconscious becomes soft, impressionable, and deeply responsive. It's why the thoughts you hold as you drift off to sleep matter so much. They are not just passing ideas. They are impressions, delicate messages delivered directly to your inner mind when it is most open to receive. If you fall asleep with worry, your subconscious begins to cradle that worry, cradling it not as a problem, but as a focus. If you fall asleep with a sense of peace, gratitude, or clear intention, that is what takes root in the dark, fertile soil of your dreaming mind. This is why so many spiritual and psychological traditions place importance on bedtime rituals, not for discipline, but because these moments are portals. They are opportunities to shape the direction of your inner landscape. Even something as simple as a gentle affirmation, repeated softly in your mind as you lie in bed, can begin to shape the patterns your subconscious works with during the night. Not in an instant, not like a command, but like a soft suggestion, repeated night after night, slowly becoming familiar. And it's not only about what you think, it's also about what you imagine. Visualization before sleep is one of the most powerful tools for subconscious transformation. When you picture something vividly, with color, emotion, texture, and presence, your subconscious accepts it as experience. It doesn't ask whether it's happening in reality. It only knows that it feels real. You might visualize a future where you feel strong and clear. You might imagine your body healing itself with calm and precision. You might picture a space inside yourself where you feel completely safe, completely accepted, completely whole. When repeated with feeling, these images become blueprints. Your subconscious begins to organize its responses, habits, and choices around them. And while you sleep, the mind begins to process everything, sorting through the day's impressions, releasing what it can, strengthening what has been repeated, and quietly reweaving your internal world. You may not be aware of this process, but it continues each night without fail. Your body also participates in this quiet change. As you sleep, your nervous system repairs itself. Hormones rebalance. Muscles regenerate. But these physical shifts are guided in part by your subconscious programming. A mind filled with anxiety or fear sends different instructions to the body than a mind steeped in calm and trust. The subconscious connects directly with your physiology, which is why mental healing and physical healing are never truly separate. If you've ever woken up from sleep feeling lighter, as if something had shifted while you weren't watching, that's your subconscious at work. It may have processed an emotion you couldn't face during the day. It may have sorted through a confusion or softened a tension or nudged you closer to clarity. It works in its own language, beyond words, beneath awareness, and you don't have to do much. You don't have to strive or push. You only have to choose, gently and consistently, what you offer your mind before sleep. Some people speak kind affirmations as they drift off. Others imagine their younger selves and offer them love. Some breathe deeply and whisper a single phrase, like, "I am safe," or "Let it go," or "I am becoming who I was always meant to be." These small acts, repeated night after night, are not wasted. The subconscious listens every time, and what it hears, it begins to become. Even your dreams, strange as they may seem, are part of this process. They carry the symbols your subconscious chooses to explore, reshape, or release. You may not remember them all, but they still work on you. They still shift the inner landscape. So when you go to sleep, think of it not as a pause, but as a journey inward, a nightly return to your most receptive state, a space where your old patterns loosen and new ones quietly begin to form. There is a doorway inside your mind, subtle and silent, that few people realize exists. It doesn't swing open with force or effort. It opens only when the mind becomes still, when the body softens, when control is gently released. That doorway is hypnosis, and it leads straight into the subconscious, without filters, without resistance, without the constant chatter of everyday thought. But hypnosis is often misunderstood. It's not mind control. It's not magic. It's not sleep, though it may feel dreamy and deeply restful. At its core, hypnosis is simply a state of focused relaxation, a natural state you already experience every day without realizing it. It's the quiet moment when you're so absorbed in a book or a film that you forget where you are. When you drive a familiar road and suddenly realize you don't remember the last few turns. When you're half awake in the morning and ideas drift in effortlessly as if from somewhere else. In these states, your conscious guard lowers. The analytical part of your mind, the part that questions, judges, and filters, takes a step back. And what remains is openness, a gentle, curious, deeply receptive awareness. This is the state in which your subconscious listens best. And this is why hypnosis has been used for centuries in one form or another to facilitate healing, behavior change, and inner transformation. When you enter a hypnotic state, whether through guided meditation, breathwork, visualization, or even by listening to a calming voice, you are stepping into that inner doorway. And once inside, something beautiful begins to happen. The subconscious becomes more suggestible, not in the sense that it will accept anything mindlessly, but in the sense that it becomes more willing to rewrite its patterns. If the suggestion is offered with clarity, repetition, and emotional resonance, this is where healing begins to accelerate. Under hypnosis, fears can be traced gently back to their roots. Old beliefs can be seen from a new angle, softened and replaced. Habits that once felt automatic can be reimagined from the inside out, because the subconscious does not resist what feels safe and familiar. It embraces it. And safety is key. The subconscious is always trying to protect you. Even the most self-sabotaging patterns exist because, on some level, the subconscious believes they're serving a purpose, shielding you from disappointment, rejection, pain. Hypnosis doesn't fight these defenses. It listens to them, it honors them, and then it offers something better. You might visualize a version of yourself who feels confident and calm. You might be guided to speak to a younger part of yourself who is still holding fear. You might imagine walking into a future where your body and mind feel aligned. And while your conscious mind may view these as just images, your subconscious accepts them as real experiences, especially when they are infused with feeling. In fact, your subconscious doesn't draw a hard line between imagination and reality. If you vividly picture yourself standing tall, breathing deeply, and speaking with clarity, and you do this often in a relaxed state, your subconscious begins to adjust your sense of identity around that image. The body responds, your tone shifts, your posture changes, because the subconscious doesn't just store memories, it builds expectations. And through hypnosis, those expectations can be gently rewritten. It's not instant, it's not forceful. It's more like reprogramming a musical instrument that has been playing the same melody for years. Slowly, patiently, you begin to teach it a new song. The fingers don't always land on the right notes at first, but with time and repetition, the new melody becomes second nature. And the subconscious, once rigid in its old patterns, begins to flow in a different direction. Many people find that working with the subconscious in this way brings insights they never expected. Emotions rise to the surface, not to overwhelm, but to be released. Forgotten memories may return, not as trauma, but as understanding. There's often a sense of recognition, as if meeting a part of yourself you didn't know you'd lost. And all of this happens in a state of deep rest. The body is still, the breath is soft, the mind is calm, and in that calm, the inner world becomes malleable. The hardened beliefs begin to soften, the automatic responses start to shift, and something deeper than thought, a knowing, a presence, begins to emerge. Even if you never formally enter hypnosis, your subconscious responds in similar ways to deep meditation, gentle focus, even daydreaming. Whenever the conscious mind relaxes its grip, the subconscious listens more closely. And what it hears during these moments, the tone, the repetition, the feeling, shapes how it evolves. There is a silent connection running through you, one that doesn't use words or conscious thought, yet influences nearly everything about how you feel, act, and respond. It is the conversation between your subconscious mind and your body. And though you may not always notice it, this communication is constant, profound, and deeply intimate. Your body is not simply a vessel, it is a mirror of your inner world. Every thought, every emotion, every unspoken belief stored in your subconscious eventually finds its way into physical form through posture, tension, breathing patterns, and sensations. It's as if your body is the instrument your subconscious plays to express what cannot be spoken directly. Think of how your body reacts to stress. Your shoulders tighten, your jaw clenches, your breath becomes shallow, the heart speeds up. None of these are decisions made by the conscious mind. They are automatic responses, triggered by deeply ingrained patterns within the subconscious. The mind perceives a threat, even a subtle one, and the body responds as if it must protect you immediately. But the same is true for peace. When you feel safe, genuinely safe, your body reflects that too. Your muscles relax, your heart rate slows, your belly softens, The breath moves deeply and easily. These are not just signs of calm. They are the body's way of saying, I believe I am safe. And that belief comes from the subconscious. This is why you might feel tense in situations that seem harmless to others, or why you may find yourself exhausted after certain conversations, or uncomfortable in certain environments. The conscious mind might say, everything's fine, but the subconscious holds a different story. A story rooted in past experiences, learned associations, and emotional memory. The body listens to that story, not the one you try to tell yourself logically. And because the subconscious works so closely with the nervous system, the signals it sends ripple through every system in the body. The immune system, the digestive system, the endocrine system, the way you heal, the way you sleep, the way you carry yourself through the day. It's why long-term stress, especially emotional stress, can manifest as chronic illness, not because the body is weak, but because it has been in a prolonged state of alert. The subconscious keeps sending the message, we're not safe yet, and the body obeys, bracing itself for danger that may never arrive. But just as your subconscious can hold on to old fear, it can also learn new safety. When you begin to work with your inner world, through breath, through visualization, through mindful self-talk, you begin to change the messages your subconscious sends to your body. You show it that things are different now, that the danger is no longer present, that you are safe to rest, to soften, to heal. Even the smallest changes can create ripples. A slow, conscious breath taken in the midst of anxiety, a gentle stretch in the morning sun, a moment of placing your hand over your heart and simply saying, I am here. These are not empty rituals. They are signals. Each one tells your body a new story, and your subconscious is always listening. Some people notice that as they do inner work, whether through therapy, meditation, or self-reflection, they begin to feel physical sensations they hadn't noticed before. Old tightness, a flutter in the chest, warmth rising from the belly. This isn't strange. It's communication. The body is releasing old emotional patterns held for years, perhaps decades, and as the subconscious begins to shift, the body begins to unwind. Your posture changes, your voice deepens, your face softens. These are signs that the connection between mind and body is healing, that alignment is returning, that your outer world is slowly coming into harmony with your inner truth. And you can guide this process with presence. You don't need to analyze every sensation or trace every pain back to its origin. Sometimes it's enough just to notice, to feel, to say, I'm listening. The subconscious doesn't need perfection. It responds to patience, to kindness, to consistent signals of care. And those signals can come in so many forms. The food you choose to nourish yourself, the rest you allow without guilt, the way you breathe when no one's watching, the words you speak to yourself when you wake up and when you lie down at night. Each one carries weight. Each one shapes the body's experience of safety or stress, of balance or disconnection. The body remembers what the mind forgets. And when the body speaks, it's your subconscious reaching out, not to frighten you, but to be understood. It says, there's something here that needs attention, something unspoken that wants to be felt. And when you begin to feel with compassion instead of fear, the inner tension begins to dissolve. There are feelings you carry within you that have no clear beginning, no neat explanation. They rise and fall like tides, seemingly without warning, often tied not to the present moment, but to something deeper, something older. These feelings are echoes, emotional imprints left behind by experiences your conscious mind may have long forgotten, but your subconscious mind has never released. Emotional energy does not simply disappear, it settles. It burrows quietly into the corners of your being, into the muscles, the breath, the posture, the rhythm of your heart. It gets stored in the body, layered within the nervous system, shaping the way you respond to life. Perhaps there was a time when you were hurt and it wasn't safe to express the pain, so you pushed it down. Maybe you were told not to cry, or that anger was dangerous, or that fear made you weak. So the feelings never left. They were simply packed away, hidden, managed. And now, years later, you feel tension in your chest for no apparent reason, or a lump in your throat when you try to speak your truth, or a sudden wave of sadness when everything seems fine. These are not random. These are messages. The subconscious doesn't forget what the body has felt. It holds on to unresolved emotions, storing them like letters never opened, waiting for a moment when it might finally be safe to feel them. And yet, because these emotional imprints live so far beneath thought, we often don't recognize their source. We tell ourselves we're over it, that it's in the past, that it doesn't matter anymore. But the subconscious mind doesn't move on simply because time has passed. It moves on when emotion has been fully felt, fully seen, and fully allowed. This is why certain situations continue to trigger us. The current moment acts like a key, unlocking an old emotional memory that was never processed. The event may be new, but the feeling is ancient. The reaction feels overwhelming, not because the situation is dangerous, but because it's touching something that never had a voice. And so the subconscious creates patterns to help you avoid these feelings. It learns to keep you busy, distracted, numb, compliant. It wraps you in routines and behaviors that seem safe on the surface, but which are secretly organized around never feeling that thing again. That grief, that rage, that vulnerability. But avoidance is exhausting. It creates tension in the body and distance from the self. The more you avoid a feeling, the more power it gains in the shadows. And the truth is, feelings don't want to hurt you. They want to move through you. They are not dangerous. It is only the act of suppressing them, judging them, fearing them that makes them feel unbearable. Your subconscious holds emotional energy like a container holds water. And when the container is too full, the water spills. Through anxiety, through fatigue, through sudden emotional outbursts, or even through physical illness. The body becomes the pressure valve for what the subconscious is holding onto. But this can change. The container can be emptied, not all at once, but drop by drop. With patience, with presence, with the willingness to sit with what you feel, without needing to fix it or explain it away. Sometimes just naming the feeling is enough. Sometimes just breathing with it, allowing it to rise and fall like a wave, is all your subconscious needs to begin the release. And once a feeling is fully felt, it begins to transform. What once felt like grief may shift into relief. What once felt like fear may soften into insight. The emotion doesn't disappear, it integrates. It becomes part of your story, not as a wound, but as wisdom. This is why emotional healing often feels like coming home to yourself. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about finally making space for the parts of you that were silenced. It's about recognizing that your emotional responses aren't flaws, but signals, invitations, clues left by the subconscious to help you remember what still needs care. And when you begin to offer that care, not just once, but consistently, the subconscious responds. The tension in the chest loosens. The panic that once felt automatic begins to quiet. The body starts to trust that it no longer needs to brace, that it no longer needs to hold what you are now willing to feel. Inside each of us lives a younger self, often unnoticed, often unheard. This inner child isn't just a memory, or a phase we've outgrown. It is a living part of the subconscious mind. It carries the raw emotions, unmet needs, and unfiltered beliefs formed during our most formative years. And whether we acknowledge it or not, this part of us continues to influence how we feel, how we connect, how we protect ourselves, and how we seek love. The inner child remembers everything, not always in the form of stories, but in sensations, reactions, and instinctive patterns. It remembers the tone of voices that shaped us. It remembers what it felt like to be praised and what it felt like to be dismissed. It remembers moments of wonder, of loneliness, of confusion, of awe. And it carries these moments not in the past tense, but in the now. To the subconscious, time is not linear. If something was never processed fully, it is still happening. This is why we sometimes react with disproportionate emotion to present-day events. Someone interrupts us, and we feel invisible. A friend forgets a text, and we feel abandoned. A criticism at work leaves us spiraling in shame. These reactions aren't simply about now. They are echoes. Echoes of a younger self who felt unseen, unheard, unsafe, and still lives inside, waiting for comfort that never came. And yet, the inner child is not only a container for pain, it is also the source of our greatest creativity, joy, playfulness, and openness. When this part of the subconscious feels safe, it brings vitality to the surface, a spark in the eyes, a lightness in the heart, a willingness to be spontaneous, to explore, to trust. But when the inner child feels neglected or rejected, it retreats, it hardens, it shields itself with armor, often shaped as perfectionism, avoidance, overthinking, or people-pleasing. The subconscious works tirelessly to protect this child's self. It will design habits and emotional defenses to make sure we never feel the same kind of hurt again. It learns how to anticipate disapproval. It becomes hyper-aware of tone, of body language, of hidden meanings. It turns even simple interactions into emotional math, calculating what is safe, what might lead to rejection, what must be said or not said to survive. And yet, all of this protection can become a prison. The subconscious tries to keep the child safe, but in doing so, it often keeps them stuck, trapped in a version of the world that no longer exists. The adult self may now have more power, more perspective, more capacity, but the subconscious doesn't know this unless it is shown gently and repeatedly. Healing the inner child isn't about digging through the past to find every wound. It's about building a relationship, slowly, patiently, with that part of yourself. It begins by noticing when a reaction feels too big for the moment, when your voice shakes in situations that shouldn't be threatening, when shame or fear arrive without warning. These are clues, doorways, opportunities to pause and ask, what part of me feels small right now? What does it need? Sometimes the answer is silence. Sometimes it's warmth. Sometimes it's just the steady presence of the adult self, the calm voice saying, I see you, I hear you, I'm here now, you're not alone. And though this may feel strange at first, the subconscious recognizes sincerity. It listens, not to words alone, but to tone, to breath, to consistency. Imagery can also be powerful. You might visualize your younger self in a room, sitting quietly, waiting. You walk in, not to fix them, not to analyze them, but simply to sit beside them, to hold their hand, to listen. Over time, this simple image becomes a felt sense. The inner child begins to trust that it no longer has to cry alone, that someone is here now, someone who understands, someone who can keep them safe. And as this trust builds, something remarkable begins to unfold. The subconscious softens, the defenses loosen, the patterns that once felt immovable begin to shift. Because at last, the part of you that was stuck in survival begins to experience peace. You may notice this in unexpected ways, in the way you speak to yourself after a mistake, in the softness with which you now approach fear, in the willingness to be vulnerable without shame. These are signs that your inner world is changing, that the subconscious is no longer organized around an old pain, but around a new safety. And with that safety comes access. Access to joy, to play, to wonder, to the parts of you that were never damaged, only hidden. The parts that still want to dance in the rain, to create without judgment, to love without armor. These parts don't need to be taught. They only need to be welcomed back. There are moments when something stirs inside you without warning. A quiet knowing, a sudden pull, a voice that doesn't speak in words, but in direction. You might call it a hunch, a gut feeling, a whisper from somewhere deep inside. Whatever name you give it, this is intuition, and it is the voice of your subconscious mind, speaking from the depths of everything it has ever seen, heard, and remembered. Unlike the conscious mind, which works slowly and analytically, intuition works instantly. It doesn't calculate, it senses. It processes vast amounts of information beneath the surface. Past experiences, subtle patterns, body language, unspoken energy, and delivers its message as a feeling, a nudge, an inner yes or no. And because this guidance is not always logical, many people dismiss it. But what seems like instinct is often your subconscious working at its most refined level, responding not to just this moment, but to everything that came before it. You might find yourself walking into a room and immediately feeling unsettled, though nothing seems wrong, or meeting someone new and instantly feeling at ease, even before a single word is exchanged. These reactions are not guesses. They are the subconscious analyzing details too subtle for the conscious mind to grasp. A glance, a tone, a shift in energy, a micro-expression, and it delivers the result as intuition. But for many, intuition becomes clouded, not because it disappears, but because its voice is drowned out. Years of overthinking, doubt, and self-judgment can create noise that makes it difficult to hear that quiet, inner signal. The more we rely solely on logic, the more we train ourselves to ignore the body's messages. And yet, intuition never fully goes silent. It waits, like a faint light at the edge of the forest, ready to guide the moment we pause long enough to see it. The subconscious mind speaks through the body, and intuition is often felt physically first. A tightness in the chest, a flutter in the stomach, a sudden calm that washes over you like a wave. These are not random sensations, they are signals. The body is always translating what the subconscious is picking up. And when you begin to notice these sensations, without immediately rationalizing them away, you start to rebuild the bridge between the conscious and subconscious. Trusting your intuition requires more than belief. It requires practice. It requires slowing down, creating space, and listening not just with the mind, but with your whole being. And like any relationship, the one you have with your inner knowing deepens with time and care. Some people reconnect with their intuition through stillness, through meditation, nature walks, or quiet reflection. Others find it during movement, in the rhythm of walking, dancing, or flowing breath. Wherever the mind quiets, intuition begins to rise. Not because it has grown louder, but because the noise around it has softened. And sometimes, intuition contradicts what seems reasonable. It might nudge you to say no when everything says yes, to walk away when it would be easier to stay, to leap into the unknown before you have all the answers. This is when trust becomes essential, because the subconscious sees more than your conscious awareness can hold at once. It remembers the pain of past choices, the emotional undertones of similar situations, the truths you haven't yet admitted to yourself. And when it urges you in a certain direction, it is rarely arbitrary. But intuition is never forceful. It will not shove or demand. It waits for you to turn inward. It whispers, and if ignored, it waits some more. It doesn't grow angry or impatient. It simply continues to observe, quietly collecting every detail of your life and storing it within you. Over time, as you begin to trust it more, it begins to guide you more clearly. You start to notice the difference between fear and truth, between impulse and insight. Fear is loud, urgent, and rigid. Intuition is calm, grounded, and unshakable, even when it doesn't make immediate sense. You feel it not in the racing mind, but in the stillness beneath it. And the more aligned your inner world becomes, the more you listen to your body, process your emotions, and speak to yourself with honesty, the stronger your intuition becomes. It's not that the signal gets louder, it's that you become quieter inside, more attuned, more willing to listen. There is something deeply empowering about living in harmony with your intuition. You no longer need constant approval. You no longer need every outcome to be guaranteed. You move through life with an inner compass, one that points toward wholeness, even when the path is uncertain. And even when doubt arises, as it always will, you know how to come back to that still place inside you. Every day, without thinking, you perform hundreds of small tasks automatically. You brush your teeth, you get dressed, you reach for your phone, you walk, speak, eat, and respond to familiar situations without consciously deciding how to do each one. These behaviors feel effortless, natural, even invisible, but behind them all is the quiet work of your subconscious mind, running patterns it has memorized over time. Habits are not just routines. They are deeply rooted programs, wired into the subconscious through repetition, emotion, and reinforcement. Once learned, they operate below awareness, conserving energy and freeing the conscious mind for other tasks. In fact, most of your daily actions are not conscious choices at all, but habit loops initiated and completed by the subconscious. This is not a flaw, it's efficiency, it's survival. But while some habits serve you, protecting your health, supporting your goals, maintaining your rhythm, others limit you, pull you back, or keep you locked in cycles that no longer match the person you are becoming. And because they live beneath awareness, they can be difficult to see clearly. They feel like part of your personality. I'm just someone who avoids confrontation. I always procrastinate. I can't help but overthink. These aren't traits, they're patterns. They were learned, which means they can be unlearned. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between helpful and harmful habits. It simply reinforces what has been repeated. If you reached for comfort food in times of stress and found temporary relief, your subconscious stored that as a coping mechanism. If you stayed quiet to avoid conflict and felt safer, that response became automatic. The subconscious is like a loyal assistant. It doesn't argue, it just remembers and repeats. This is why changing habits through willpower alone often fails. Willpower operates in the conscious mind, but habits are maintained by the subconscious. To create lasting change, the new behavior must reach below the surface and reshape the automatic pattern. One of the most effective ways to do this is through intentional repetition. When you perform a new behavior consistently, especially when paired with a positive emotional experience, you begin to carve a new groove in the subconscious. At first, it feels unnatural. The old habit pulls you back like a familiar current. But with time and persistence, the new path strengthens. The subconscious begins to favor it. Eventually, it becomes the new normal. But repetition alone isn't enough. Emotion is the glue that seals the pattern. If you repeat something mindlessly, the subconscious may not fully engage. But if the new behavior is connected to a feeling, joy, relief, pride, safety, it becomes memorable. This is why small celebrations can make a big difference. A smile, a breath, a word of encouragement to yourself after taking a positive step. It tells your subconscious, yes, this matters. Let's remember this. The timing of repetition also matters. The subconscious is more open to suggestion during transitional states, just after waking, just before sleep, during meditation, or when deeply relaxed. In these moments, new intentions are more likely to be absorbed. A quiet affirmation, a gentle visualization, a clear inner statement during these windows can act like a key, unlocking the inner programming and offering it something new. It's also important to understand that habits are not isolated. They are connected by emotion, environment, and belief. A single habit often lives inside a larger system. For example, procrastination may not be about laziness, but about fear of failure. Overeating may not be about hunger, but about a need for comfort. When you trace a habit back to its emotional root, you begin to understand what the subconscious is trying to protect or soothe. And when you offer the subconscious a new way to meet that same need, one that is healthier, more aligned, more empowering, it is willing to shift because its only goal is to help. The patterns it runs are not judgments. They are strategies based on what you once experienced. And those strategies can be updated. This is why kindness and curiosity are so important when working with your habits. Harsh self-criticism may activate the conscious mind, but it only reinforces shame in the subconscious. And shame makes change harder. But when you observe your habits with compassion, when you say, I see why this formed, I understand what you were trying to do, you create safety. And safety is the condition in which the subconscious becomes most flexible. As you begin to rewrite these automatic loops, you'll notice more space, more choice. A moment of pause between the trigger and the response. This is the space of freedom, the point where the conscious and subconscious begin to collaborate rather than compete. It's subtle at first, but deeply powerful. You start to feel like you're not just reacting anymore. You're responding, you're choosing. You're shifting from a life run by yesterday's programming to a life guided by today's awareness. And with each new loop you rewire, your subconscious learns that change isn't dangerous. It's possible, it's safe, it's welcome. And so the patterns begin to adapt. Deep within the subconscious lies a protector. It does not speak loudly or clearly. It does not use logic. It doesn't ask questions. Its job is not to help you grow, but to keep you safe. And one of its most subtle, persistent tools is self-sabotage. At first glance, self-sabotage appears irrational. You procrastinate on something that matters deeply to you. You push away the person you love. You shrink in the very moment when you're meant to shine. You set goals and then unconsciously undermine them. On the surface, it feels like a failure of discipline, or a lack of motivation, or even weakness. But the truth is far more compassionate. The subconscious is not trying to harm you. It is trying to protect you from pain, from disappointment, from the emotional echoes of the past. The subconscious cannot tell time. It does not differentiate between a current situation and a memory that still carries emotional weight. So when it senses that something familiar may lead to an old wound, a rejection, a humiliation, a betrayal, it steps in, not by warning you consciously, but by pulling levers beneath the surface, by making you forget, by draining your energy, by triggering anxiety, by stirring just enough fear to make you hesitate, to make you back away. These patterns are not random. They are protective reflexes designed long ago in response to situations that once felt overwhelming. If speaking up once led to shame, your subconscious may now block your voice before you even realize it. If love once came with abandonment, your subconscious might create conflict before closeness becomes too vulnerable. If success once triggered jealousy or isolation, your subconscious might associate achievement with danger and hold you back just before things go well. These responses are not chosen, they are automatic. And because they happen below awareness, they feel like fate. Like you're the problem, like you simply can't get it right. But none of that is true. The subconscious is not judging you. It's running an old program, one written by emotional memory, reinforced by repetition, and carried out without questioning whether it still fits your life today. To work with self-sabotage, you must begin not with willpower, but with compassion. The question is not, why do I keep messing this up? The question is, what is my subconscious trying to protect me from? That question opens the door. It softens the tension. It invites awareness without blame, because underneath every act of sabotage is a fear. And underneath that fear is a longing for safety, for love, for approval, for belonging. You might discover that procrastination is not laziness, but a fear of not being good enough. That indecision is not weakness, but a deep need to avoid disappointing others. That perfectionism is not ambition, but a defense against feeling flawed. Once you understand the true emotion driving the behavior, you can begin to offer your subconscious new evidence. You can show it that the danger it anticipates is no longer real, that you are no longer the child or the powerless version of yourself who once needed protection through avoidance or retreat. This is not an overnight process. The subconscious requires consistent reassurance. Just like a frightened animal slowly learning to trust again, it will test you. It will observe. It will resist. Not because it wants to control you, but because it needs to be sure that this new path, this risk you're taking, is truly safe. One of the most powerful ways to reshape self-sabotage is to create small wins, tiny actions taken again and again without overwhelming the system. Each successful step, no matter how small, signals to the subconscious, we can do this now, it's okay. If the fear is about being seen, perhaps it begins with speaking one sentence. If the fear is about failure, it might begin with finishing one task, even imperfectly. These little shifts matter more than dramatic declarations. They build trust. Another key is to watch your self-talk. The words you say to yourself, especially in moments of difficulty, are like instructions given directly to the subconscious. If you respond to a mistake with harshness, the subconscious interprets the event as dangerous and reinforces avoidance. But if you respond with gentleness, "That was hard, but I'm learning," you teach your inner protector that growth is not a threat. Journaling can also help, especially when done from a place of inquiry rather than judgment. Writing out what you're afraid might happen if you succeed, or if you change, often reveals the subconscious scripts running in the background. Sometimes they sound absurd when written down. Sometimes they are surprisingly tender, but in every case, they become more visible. And what becomes visible can be worked with, gently and patiently. Self-sabotage is not a flaw in your system. It is your system, trying its best to serve you with the limited tools it was given. But the good news is that the system can evolve. New tools can be offered. New associations can be built. The subconscious mind is not your enemy. It is simply waiting for new instructions, new emotional experiences, and a steady signal that you are now strong enough to move forward, even when the past once told you not to. Some of the most beautiful creations in the world, works of art, profound insights, revolutionary ideas, did not arise from focused effort or step-by-step thinking. They emerged from a place just beyond conscious control, a quiet space, a soft spark, a flicker of something unexpected. This is the creative mind in communion with the subconscious, where originality does not come from force, but from allowing. Your subconscious is not just a storehouse of memories and beliefs. It is a wellspring of imagination. It holds within it all of your forgotten dreams, all the images you've absorbed, the stories you've heard, the emotions you've felt. And beneath that vast archive is a mysterious ability to connect things in ways your conscious mind cannot. It does not reason, it reveals. It does not explain, it expresses. This is why some of your best ideas come when you're not trying. In the shower, on a walk, just before sleep. These are the moments when your conscious mind relaxes its grip, and the deeper intuitive currents of your mind begin to flow freely. In those quiet, liminal states, the subconscious begins to piece together fragments. An image from yesterday, a memory from childhood, a line from a book, a shape in a dream, and fuses them into something new. Creativity is not limited to artists or writers or musicians. It lives in everyone. Every time you solve a problem, imagine a new future, or see something ordinary in a new way, you are using creative energy. And most of that energy rises from beneath the surface of your awareness, shaped and stirred by your subconscious mind. The subconscious is naturally non-linear. It doesn't follow rules or timelines. It works in metaphor, in sensation, in flashes of insight. This is why creative expression often feels emotional. It's not coming from the logical, planning mind. It's coming from the place that holds feeling, memory, symbol, and soul. When you daydream, you enter that space. When you doodle, hum, improvise, or let your thoughts drift without judgment, you're allowing your subconscious to breathe, to create without needing approval or explanation. In these moments, there is no pressure to perform. There is only flow. But creativity often becomes blocked, not because the subconscious stops offering ideas, but because the conscious mind becomes too loud, too critical, too fearful. The inner voice that says, "This isn't good enough," or "What will people think?" This voice comes not from your creative core, but from layers of conditioning, from years of being taught to seek correctness over curiosity, achievement over exploration. To reconnect with the creative energy of your subconscious, you must create safety. Safety to fail, safety to make a mess, safety to express without knowing why. The subconscious thrives in freedom, not control. And when you give yourself permission to explore with openness, it begins to respond. This is why some of the most powerful creative practices are the simplest. Free writing, where you put words on a page without editing. Mindful sketching, where you let your hand move without a plan. Improvise movement, where your body leads and your thoughts follow. These are ways of turning down the volume of the conscious mind so that the subconscious can speak. And when it does speak, it often surprises you. You may find yourself creating something you don't fully understand, something that feels like it came from somewhere beyond you. That's because it did, not beyond you in the cosmic sense, but beyond the you that thinks in words and steps and spreadsheets. The creative self is older, wilder, softer, and infinitely wise. It doesn't care about perfection. It seeks connection, resonance, truth. This is why dreams are so often filled with symbolic imagery, with stories that don't make sense in a linear way, but are rich in feeling. The subconscious is not interested in literal explanation. It is trying to reveal something emotional, something buried, something true. And often, the best way to understand that truth is not to dissect it, but to create with it. Creativity is a form of healing because it allows the subconscious to speak. When you write a story or paint an image, or speak from the heart without a script, you are giving shape to the invisible. You are giving voice to the part of you that rarely gets to speak. And the more you practice this, the more trust builds. Your subconscious begins to sense that it will be heard, that it doesn't need to scream through dreams or anxiety or tension. It can whisper through color, through rhythm, through words that don't make perfect sense but feel perfectly honest. Some of what you create may never be seen. Some of it may not even make sense to you right away. That's okay. The subconscious doesn't create for praise. It creates for integration, for release, for movement. And over time, this quiet flow shapes more than just art or ideas. It shapes how you live, how you respond to the world, how you solve problems, connect with others, and see yourself. Creativity is not a hobby. It's a bridge between your inner and outer worlds, a gentle way for your deepest self to come into view. There is something that happens when your mind begins to wander, something subtle yet extraordinary. You may find yourself staring out a window, barely aware of the world around you. Minutes pass, unnoticed. You drift through thoughts, memories, sensations, images, not deliberately, but naturally. This is daydreaming, and it is not a waste of time. It is the subconscious in motion. In a world obsessed with focus, achievement, and productivity, drifting thoughts are often dismissed. But in truth, daydreaming is one of the most powerful tools your subconscious uses to process, integrate, and imagine. It is the open sky where new possibilities form. It is a canvas upon which your mind sketches potential futures, replays unfinished moments, and explores realities not bound by time or logic. Unlike conscious thought, which is structured and goal-oriented, daydreaming is fluid. It moves in loops and waves. It follows emotion, curiosity, and instinct. You may begin by thinking of something small, an errand to run, a task to complete, but then your mind slips sideways. A memory appears, a feeling surfaces. You begin to imagine a different version of a conversation, or envision what it would feel like to finally finish something you've postponed. You may not even realize that you're rehearsing life, trying on ideas, shaping your sense of self in the privacy of thought. This process is not random. The subconscious uses daydreaming as a way to sort through emotional residue, to reframe experiences, to test new responses in a safe internal environment. It is a rehearsal space, a healing space, a space of gentle exploration. Through daydreaming, your inner mind is asking questions. What if this had gone differently? What if I finally did what I've been afraid to do? What would that feel like? The answers that arise don't come in words. They come in sensations, impressions, imagined outcomes that linger like soft echoes. These imagined experiences have real psychological weight. The brain does not always distinguish between vivid imagination and lived experience. Neural pathways begin to form, feelings are stirred, and the subconscious takes note. This is why daydreaming can help solve problems, often when you least expect it. You might be stuck on a decision, unable to find the right solution, and then suddenly, while walking, showering, or staring into the distance, the answer appears. Not forced, not figured out, but felt. That's your subconscious making connections beneath the surface, drawing from everything you know, everything you've lived, everything you've quietly longed for. When you let your mind drift, you loosen the grip of the conscious mind. You step outside the narrow hallway of focus and into a field of infinite possibility. And in that field, your subconscious begins to play. It remembers past lessons. It reconfigures meaning. It stirs long-forgotten desires and offers you glimpses of what could be. But the power of daydreaming goes beyond creativity or problem-solving. It's also a form of emotional regulation. When the subconscious is overwhelmed, it often seeks out a kind of internal escape, a scenario where you feel safe, seen, understood. You might find yourself imagining a version of your life where something painful never happened, or a future where you finally feel whole. These aren't just fantasies. They are emotional repairs. They're the mind's way of soothing what the heart still aches to resolve. And though you may not act on every imagined scene, each one carries a message, a desire unmet, a need unspoken, a truth waiting to be acknowledged. When you pay attention to your daydreams, not to control them, but to witness them, you begin to understand your deeper emotional landscape. You begin to recognize the themes that return again and again, and those themes hold meaning. Some people worry that daydreaming is a form of avoidance, and it can be, especially if it becomes a way to escape all responsibility. But more often, it is the subconscious offering solutions in disguise. It is showing you what you're drawn to, what you fear, what you crave. And if you listen closely, you can use these gentle imaginings to make changes in your waking life. Changes rooted not just in logic, but in emotional truth. The subconscious does not always ask for your attention with loud symbols. Sometimes, it tiptoes in on a drifting thought, a repeated fantasy, a sudden what if. It doesn't demand action. It invites reflection. And when you follow the thread of that invitation, you begin to see more clearly the inner patterns shaping your outer world. This is why moments of stillness are so essential, not just for rest, but for reconnection. When you pause, the subconscious steps forward. It begins to speak through wandering thoughts, spontaneous memories, flashes of insight that seem to come from nowhere. But they do come from somewhere. They come from within, from the part of you that is always paying attention, even when you are not. There is a quiet intelligence at work inside you every night. While your body rests, while your conscious mind releases its hold on the world, your subconscious steps forward and begins its sacred task: healing. Not just physical healing, though that is part of it, but emotional, psychological, and energetic healing. All happening quietly, beneath the threshold of awareness while you sleep. The subconscious is not idle during sleep. It does not switch off or go dark. In fact, it becomes more active in many ways, untethered from the distractions of waking life, free to sort, rewire, and restore. It moves through layers of memory and meaning, resolving what couldn't be digested during the day. It pulls fragments of thought, unspoken emotions, and subtle tensions from your system and begins to organize them into coherence. What felt overwhelming during the day may soften overnight. What confused you may feel clearer by morning. This isn't magic. It's the natural rhythm of subconscious processing. When you sleep, your brain enters cycles: light sleep, deep sleep, and REM, each one playing a different role in this inner repair. In deep sleep, the body regenerates, cells repair, hormones balance. And during a REM, when dreams often occur, the subconscious engages in emotional processing. It plays out symbolic narratives, confronts unresolved feelings, and creates simulations of situations that help you rehearse, release, or reframe. Even if you don't remember your dreams, the healing still happens. You might notice it not in flashes of memory, but in how you feel the next day. A bit lighter, a bit more centered, or perhaps more stirred up. Because sometimes healing brings what was buried to the surface, asking to be felt more fully before it can move. The subconscious uses sleep as a canvas. It paints with emotion, image, sensation. It It doesn't need logic. It doesn't ask for conscious permission. It works quietly, drawing from everything you've experienced. Every touch, every word, every glance, every thought you barely noticed. And it brings it all into alignment with what you are becoming. Sometimes the healing is gentle. You sleep deeply, wake peacefully. Other times, it's more turbulent. You may toss and turn, wake with a feeling you can't name. This too is healing. It means something within you is shifting. Something is being released or brought into view or reorganized so that your inner world becomes just a little more whole. This is why sleep is sacred. It is not passive. It is not a break from life. It is part of life, a time when your subconscious works on your behalf, cleansing the day's impressions, repairing emotional tears, and making room for something new. And the more intentional you are before sleep, the more deeply your subconscious can support you. What you think about just before you fall asleep matters. The final thoughts you feed your mind become the seeds the subconscious plants and tends overnight. If you fall asleep to worry, the mind may spend hours cycling through scenarios of danger. But if you fall asleep with gentleness, with gratitude, with calming imagery, with self-compassion, the subconscious receives that signal and uses it as the foundation for your internal work. Even a single breath, taken consciously before bed, can shift your entire inner environment. A slow inhale, a slower exhale, a quiet sentence spoken like a lullaby. I am safe, I am healing, I am at peace. These small acts tell your subconscious, you may rest now, you may release, you may restore. And it listens. There are parts of you that are too tired to surface during the day, parts that carry old emotion, old stories, old tension. During sleep, they rise, not to haunt, but to be met, to be felt, to be transformed. The subconscious knows the path. It follows the emotional thread, winding through old rooms in your mind, gathering pieces of yourself that were scattered, forgotten, or pushed aside, and it brings them back to center. This inner work doesn't require your awareness to be effective. It only requires your trust. Trust in the process. Trust that your body and mind are doing their work, even in silence, even in darkness, even in the quiet hours when you think nothing is happening. The healing is happening. And when you wake, something has changed. Maybe something subtle, a softer mood, a clearer thought, a sudden insight, or maybe something bigger. A fear you've carried feels lighter. A decision feels easier. An emotion that used to control you now feels manageable. These are signs that your subconscious has done its work well. But healing in sleep is not only about removing pain, it's also about recharging your inner strength. During rest, the subconscious remembers what you've forgotten, your resilience, your worth, your capacity to begin again. It recenters you, not by fixing you, but by reminding you that you were never broken, only tired, only stretched, only carrying more than you needed to. And so each night, as you drift towards sleep, you return to yourself. Not the surface self, the one made of roles and tasks and expectations, but the deep self, the self who remembers who you are, who you've been, and who you're still becoming. And it is from that place, in that sacred silence, that real healing begins to take shape. There is a sense, sometimes faint and sometimes loud, that tugs gently at the edges of your awareness. It's not a voice, exactly, and it's not a thought. It's more like a pull, a quiet knowing, a direction that makes no noise, yet feels unmistakably real. This is your inner compass, the subtle guidance system of your subconscious mind, pointing not north or south, but toward what feels aligned, true, and alive for you. This inner compass doesn't rely on external maps. It's not built from rules or expectations. It wasn't designed by anyone else. It was shaped over time, through your experiences, your emotional truths, the patterns your subconscious has come to recognize as meaningful. While the conscious mind focuses on plans and predictions, the subconscious gathers data from your entire life and translates it into signals. These signals don't shout. They whisper through emotion, body sensation, and intuition. You may feel it as a tightness in your stomach when something isn't right, a calm in your chest when something resonates, a sense of relief when a hard decision is made, not because it's easy, but because it's true. These physical cues are not random. They are the subconscious alerting you to resonance or dissonance. They are your body echoing what your deeper mind already knows. The inner compass is not always logical. In fact, it often defies logic. It may guide you away from what looks safe on paper. It may nudge you toward a path with no clear outcome. But its wisdom runs deeper than analysis. The subconscious doesn't care what the world applauds. It cares about what feels whole, what feels congruent with your values, your truth, your emotional clarity. Sometimes this compass points toward discomfort, not because something is wrong, but because growth lives there. The subconscious understands that avoiding discomfort at all costs leads to stagnation. So it signals differently, a strange mix of fear and excitement, nervousness mixed with possibility. And when you learn to read those signals, to interpret them not as danger, but as direction, you begin to follow something more honest than logic. You begin to follow your path. But this path is easily clouded by noise. The subconscious can be overwhelmed by layers of conditioning, expectations inherited from parents, culture, school, and society. These voices become internalized, playing on repeat until you believe they are your own. Be practical. Don't disappoint anyone. You should want this. And slowly, the compass signal grows dim under all the static. Yet, even when buried, it doesn't disappear. The subconscious remembers your original coordinates. The moments when you felt most alive, most connected, most at peace. They leave a trace. And when you begin to move in that direction again, even subtly, your whole system lights up. You feel it before you understand it. A returning, a remembering. To tune into this compass again, you don't need answers. You need space. Silence, stillness. The subconscious needs quiet to be heard. It is not a competing voice. It is a deeper current. And you can't hear a current if the surface is full of storms. This is why practices like journaling, meditation, or walking without a destination help. They slow the noise. They widen the space between thoughts. And in that space, the subconscious can breathe. It can offer guidance not as a conclusion, but as a feeling. Sometimes the feeling is warmth. Sometimes it's the loosening of tension. Sometimes it's the urge to cry, and you're not sure why. These are all signals. The compass pointing inward, asking you to notice, to pause, to follow, not with force, but with trust. And when you begin to trust it, something changes. Decision-making becomes less frantic. You no longer need to debate every outcome endlessly. You begin to sense what aligns and what doesn't. You begin to recognize what feels like forcing and what feels like flowing. Even in the presence of doubt, the inner compass remains. The subconscious is patient. It knows you will return when you're ready. It doesn't need you to be perfect. It only needs you to listen. And each time you do, even if it's a small moment, a yes to rest, a no to something that drains you, a moment of stillness instead of productivity, you reinforce the connection. Your compass gets stronger every time you honor it, not because it becomes louder, but because you become quieter, less distracted, more willing to trust the invisible. You begin to understand that direction is not always about where you go. It's about how you feel when you take the step. And sometimes the next step is not forward. Sometimes it's a pause, a breath, a soft turning inward to ask, what feels true right now? Not forever, just now. The subconscious answers in the present, not the future. It doesn't show you the whole road. It shows you the next step, the next shift, the next opening. And when you follow it, even once, you begin to walk in rhythm with your inner self, where everything you need to know has already been quietly waiting. There's something remarkable about the things you do without thinking, the small, everyday movements and behaviors that happen as if on their own. You might reach to turn off a light, lock the door, check your phone, nod in response to a familiar phrase. These moments feel automatic, effortless, and that's because they are. They're handled not by the conscious mind, but by the subconscious, which thrives on routine and repetition. These seemingly simple actions are part of a complex system of automatic thinking that quietly shapes your entire life. Automatic thinking is the brain's way of conserving energy. Your conscious mind can only hold a few thoughts at once, but your subconscious is vast, capable of processing massive amounts of information in the background, silently guiding your reactions, your language, your assumptions, and your behavior. It's a stream that flows beneath the surface, often invisible, until you pause to notice it. Every time you walk into a familiar space, recognize a face, or respond to someone in a predictable way, that's automatic thinking at play. These patterns were formed through experience, and now they're maintained through efficiency. Your subconscious doesn't ask, is this the best response? It simply says, this is what we've always done. That's why you might find yourself reacting to something before you've even had time to consider it. A comment that stings leads to defensiveness. A tone of voice triggers silence. A compliment brings discomfort. You're not deciding to feel these things. Your subconscious is doing it for you, based on the emotional blueprint it created long ago. These automatic responses form the architecture of your inner world. They're built from past experiences, social learning, cultural messages, and deeply held beliefs. And once they're in place, they become hard to see. Like the walls of a room you've lived in for years, you stop noticing them. But they're always there, shaping the way you move, the choices you make, and the assumptions you carry. Some automatic thoughts are helpful. They protect you from danger, help you navigate familiar situations, and allow your mind to rest by outsourcing basic decisions. But others, especially those born from trauma, insecurity, or limiting beliefs, can quietly distort your perception of reality. You may walk into a room and assume you're being judged, without any evidence. You may hear silence in a conversation and assume you've said something wrong. You may see a small failure and interpret it as proof of inadequacy. These aren't facts, they're scripts, written by the subconscious long ago, now running in the background like a quiet operating system. Because the subconscious values speed over precision, it often jumps to conclusions. It fills in blanks, predicts outcomes, and pushes you toward behaviors that feel familiar, even when they no longer serve you. It prefers predictability over possibility, familiar discomfort over unfamiliar growth. But the beauty of the subconscious is that it can learn. These scripts are not permanent. With awareness and repetition, they can be rewritten. It begins with noticing, catching the automatic thought as it arises, not to judge it, but to question it gently, to ask, is this true? Is this mine? Is this how I want to respond? sometimes that awareness is enough to create space. A breath between the trigger and the reaction, a chance to choose differently. That space is powerful. It's where the conscious mind can re-enter the conversation, where you can begin to respond with intention rather than impulse. The process of rewiring begins slowly. A new thought, repeated daily. A new behavior, practiced gently. A new assumption, tried on like a soft garment. The subconscious won't accept it right away. It needs time, evidence, emotional resonance. But eventually, the new thought becomes familiar. And what is familiar becomes automatic. This is how transformation happens. Not by force, but by shifting what the subconscious treats as normal. Affirmations, visualization, and conscious reframing are tools to offer your subconscious new material. But more than words, it responds to emotion. If a new belief is paired with a meaningful experience, one that feels safe, powerful, or freeing, it begins to take root more quickly. The subconscious is always asking, how does this feel? Not just, what does this say? When you begin to feed it new feelings of safety, joy, capability, worthiness, it slowly updates its files. It begins to adjust its responses. You find yourself speaking more kindly to yourself without trying, standing a little taller, saying yes to opportunities without the weight of doubt. And these shifts ripple outward, because once a new pattern becomes automatic, it no longer requires constant effort. It becomes the new default, the new norm, the new subconscious rhythm shaping your life from beneath the surface. And though much of this work happens invisibly, its impact is profound. You begin to realize that the person you've become isn't someone you suddenly decided to be. It's someone you've practiced into existence, not in giant leaps, but in small, daily choices, repeated until they become who you are. There are moments in life that seem to crack you open, moments that stir something deep, moments that cause your heart to pound, your breath to tighten, your voice to shake. Sometimes it's the flash of a memory, a sharp word, an unexpected silence. Other times it's a situation that shouldn't feel threatening, yet suddenly does. These are triggers, and they are not signs of weakness. They are signposts from the subconscious, quietly pointing towards something that hasn't yet been healed. A trigger is not about what's happening in front of you. It's about what's already inside you, what the subconscious has stored, what it remembers, what it still believes might be dangerous. It's a sudden activation of emotional energy, usually rooted in a past experience that wasn't fully processed at the time. The present moment is simply the match. The fire was already there. You might not recognize the origin of the trigger. It might not come with clear memories or explanations. It may simply show up as an intense feeling, disproportionate, confusing, hard to name. This is because the subconscious doesn't work in neat categories. It stores emotional energy through association, through feeling, through symbolic memory. So a tone of voice, a certain word, a facial expression might call up an entire history in an instant, even if the conscious mind doesn't understand why. The body often knows before the mind. Your stomach drops, your throat closes, your heart races, your hands tremble. These aren't just reactions, they are messages. The nervous system is responding as if the past has returned, as if an old wound has been reopened. And in a way, it has. But not to hurt you, to invite healing. The subconscious is not trying to punish you when it sends a trigger. It's trying to protect you. It's scanning the environment constantly for patterns that resemble past pain. Its job is to keep you safe. And sometimes, safety means overreacting, over-anticipating, interpreting neutral moments as threats because it has seen similar patterns before. But while this protective instinct is natural, it can also keep you stuck. If every disagreement reminds your subconscious of abandonment, you might avoid relationships altogether. If every criticism recalls old shame, you might shrink from opportunities that would allow you to grow. The protective wall becomes a prison. The reaction becomes the pattern, and the pattern begins to define you. Yet the very presence of a trigger is also an opportunity. It means that the wound has come to the surface, that the energy stored deep inside is ready to be seen, felt, released. Not all at once, not perfectly, but slowly, with presence, with compassion, with curiosity. To work with a trigger is not to push it away or pretend it's not there. It's to notice it, to pause, to breathe, and to ask the inner mind, what are you trying to show me right now? What story am I reliving? What do I still believe about myself in this moment? The answers may not come in words. They may come in images, in memories, in tears that rise without warning. Or they may come in silence, a felt sense of discomfort that simply needs to be witnessed. The subconscious doesn't always need to explain. Sometimes it just needs to be held. The more you approach your triggers, not as enemies, but as teachers, the more power you reclaim. You begin to understand that you are not broken, that your reactions make sense when seen through the lens of what you've lived, that every moment of overwhelm is also a moment of communication, from a part of you that wants to heal, to feel safe, to move forward. Over time, with patience, these reactions soften. The subconscious starts to learn new associations. It begins to see that not every raised voice means danger, that not every silence means rejection, that love can be safe, that change doesn't have to hurt. This rewiring doesn't happen through force. It happens through consistent compassion, through showing up for yourself in the moments that once caused you to abandon yourself. Practices like grounding, breathwork, and inner dialogue can help. Placing your hand on your chest and reminding yourself, this is an old feeling, not a current threat. Breathing deeply and saying inwardly, I am safe in this moment. These small actions begin to interrupt the automatic loop. They create a new pattern where the subconscious learns. When this happens, I am not alone. I am here. I can choose differently. The more often you meet your triggers with awareness, the more your subconscious begins to trust that the present is not the past, that the person you are now has tools the younger you didn't, that you can be with discomfort without collapsing into it, and that, perhaps for the first time, it's safe to let go of the old story, to allow a new one to begin. Somewhere in the space between waking and dreaming, between thought and feeling, there exists a stillness, a gentle, sacred opening. It is in this quiet place that meditation begins, not as a practice of emptying the mind, but as an invitation to return to yourself. And deeper still, it becomes a bridge to your subconscious mind, the part of you that never stops listening, never stops guiding, never stops shaping the course of your life from behind the veil of awareness. Meditation is not about escaping your thoughts. It is about observing them without attachment. It is the practice of stepping back from the noise and sitting in the presence of your own being. And when you do this regularly, something subtle begins to shift. You start to recognize the patterns of your mind, the loops, the fears, the judgments. You notice what repeats, what lingers, what rises when everything else grows still. This noticing is the first act of integration. It is how the conscious mind begins to meet the subconscious, not by force, not by demand, but by creating space. In silence, the deeper layers of your mind have room to speak. And when they do, they often speak softly, not in words, but in sensations, images, impressions. A heaviness in the chest, a flicker of a memory, a sudden emotion that rises without context. These are not distractions. They are invitations. The subconscious mind surfacing, offering fragments of itself for you to feel, to witness, to hold. When you sit in meditation, you lower the volume of external input. No screens, no voices, no tasks. In that pause, your nervous system begins to regulate. Your breath slows. Your awareness drops from the head into the body. And the subconscious, which thrives in symbolic, embodied experience, begins to respond. You may not even realize it's happening. You may just feel different afterward, lighter, calmer, or sometimes more stirred up, not because you did something wrong, but because something hidden is moving toward the light. Meditation creates the conditions for healing, not by fixing the mind, but by softening it, by dissolving the rigid grip of thought and allowing something deeper to emerge. The subconscious doesn't need fixing. It needs presence. It needs safety. And meditation offers both. It's not about achieving perfect stillness. In fact, the moments when you feel restless, distracted, or emotional during meditation are often the most important. Those are the moments when the subconscious is showing you what still lives within. A buried grief, an unmet need, a belief you didn't know you carried. And in the container of stillness, these parts of you can finally breathe. Over time, meditation helps you recognize your inner landscape. You begin to see the difference between your thoughts and your awareness, between your conditioned responses and your authentic self. You begin to sense the space between stimulus and reaction, that sacred pause where choice lives. And that space is where transformation takes root. Because the subconscious doesn't change through thinking. It changes through repeated experience. And meditation is a repeated experience of safety, of slowing down, of listening inwardly. Each time you return to your breath, each time you anchor yourself in the present, you teach the subconscious, it's safe here. I don't have to run. I can stay with this. Some meditations include visualization, imagining yourself in a place of peace, or seeing your future self, or connecting with an inner guide. These images, when felt emotionally, become real to the subconscious. It doesn't question whether something is physically happening. It responds to the emotional and sensory cues. So when you visualize with presence and feeling, the subconscious accepts the experience as meaningful. It updates its map accordingly. Mantras and affirmations in meditation also bypass the critical mind when repeated gently in a relaxed state. Words like, I am enough, I am safe, I am healing, when spoken slowly, rhythmically, and with breath, sink beneath the surface and begin to rewire old beliefs. Not through force, but through nourishment, through consistent kindness. And even when you meditate without words, without images, simply sitting in awareness, the subconscious receives the message that stillness is allowed, that doing nothing is safe, that being with yourself is not dangerous. This alone is radical. For many, the subconscious has linked stillness with vulnerability, with punishment, with abandonment. But when you sit in stillness by choice and return again and again, you begin to create a new association, one of peace, presence, and trust. Meditation doesn't erase your thoughts. It changes your relationship to them. It teaches you to witness without merging, to observe without reacting. And from this place, your subconscious begins to soften its grip on old stories. It begins to show you what you're ready to see, and it trusts that you will listen. There may be days when meditation feels easy, and days when it feels heavy. Both are part of the process. What matters is that you return, that you keep offering yourself moments of presence, again and again. Because each time you sit down to meet yourself in silence, the subconscious opens the door just a little more. Some memories don't come with images or words. They come with sensations, a tension in the shoulders, a catch in the breath, a quiet sadness that arrives without explanation. These are the memories stored not in the narrative mind, but in the emotional body. The subconscious holds them like folded pages of a book you stopped reading long ago, unfinished chapters that haven't been forgotten, only set aside. There is a place inside you where these memories rest. They are not dead. They are dormant. They live in muscle and movement, in the quiet way your body braces itself before certain conversations, in the subtle shrinking that happens when you enter a room that reminds you, without knowing why, of something you never resolved. Your subconscious doesn't sort memories the way your conscious mind does. It doesn't use a timeline. It doesn't need complete context. It remembers in impressions, in pattern recognition, in emotional echoes. If something felt significant, especially if it was felt deeply, whether joyful, painful, or confusing, the subconscious will hold it. It holds not only the image of the moment, but the meaning your body assigned to it. And that meaning continues to shape you, whether or not you recall the details. That's why the present can feel haunted by the past, even when you don't understand why. A conversation might bring tears you didn't expect. A familiar smell might bring comfort or dread. An opportunity might stir up anxiety, not because it's dangerous, but because your subconscious connects it with something that once was. And it does this instantly, automatically, without checking in with your conscious mind. This is the nature of implicit memory. Unlike explicit memories, those you can recall and retell, implicit memories live beneath the surface. They are stored not as facts, but as feelings, as readiness, as tension, as avoidance. And they influence more of your behavior than you might realize. But implicit memory isn't trying to hurt you. It's trying to help you survive. It's the subconscious keeping score of where pain came from, where joy was found, and what it took to stay safe. And based on those scores, it draws conclusions. If vulnerability once led to rejection, it marks vulnerability as risky. If speaking your truth once led to punishment, it labels silence as safety. These conclusions become your unconscious rules. Rules you might follow your entire life unless they are brought into the light. Sometimes a present-day experience will trigger one of these hidden memories, not just in thought, but in sensation. You may feel suddenly small, defensive, or paralyzed. Your mind may not understand what's happening, but your body knows. Your subconscious knows. And in that moment, you are not reacting only to the present. You are reacting to the past that's been living inside you, waiting for the chance to be seen. This is why healing requires more than logic. It requires presence. It requires a willingness to sit with what doesn't yet make sense, to feel before you understand. Because when the subconscious begins to surface, it speaks in the language it knows best: emotion, image, and sensation. If you can stay with these without pushing them away, you begin to unfreeze the memories stored within them. And this thawing doesn't happen all at once. It comes in layers. A memory you've long avoided may reappear in fragments: a color, a sound, a flash of a face. You don't need to force it. You don't need to remember every detail. The subconscious will only show you what you're ready to feel. It works in cooperation with your emotional readiness, not against it. Sometimes, healing happens through association. You might cry during a song, not because of the lyrics, but because the melody touches a part of you that's never had permission to grieve. Or you might feel peace in nature, not because of the trees themselves, but because something in the stillness reminds your body what safety feels like. In these moments, Your subconscious isn't analyzing, it's releasing. It's updating the inner story. It's letting go. Journaling, therapy, mindfulness, or deep rest can help this process. But more than anything, what the subconscious needs is your willingness to stay present with it. To notice when old feelings arise, not as intrusions, but as visitors. To welcome them, sit with them, and ask what they want you to know. And you may find that beneath those memories, beneath the stored pain and patterned reactions, there is also wisdom. There is insight. There are versions of yourself you've forgotten. The child who once felt free. The part of you that still remembers joy before it was shaped by fear. These too are stored in your subconscious, just as alive, just as available. Memory is not fixed. It evolves as your perspective evolves. What once felt unbearable may now be met with compassion. What once defined you may now become a chapter, not your entire story. The subconscious is always willing to update, to let go, to rewire, but only when it feels safe. Only when it trusts that you will not abandon yourself when the memory surfaces. And so, the work becomes not digging for the past, but listening for what still echoes. Not forcing recall, but softening into presence. Letting the subconscious know, it is okay to remember now. I am here. I can hold this. And in that quiet permission, what has been stored for years may finally begin to rise and to rest. There is a space inside your mind where symbols live, not just letters or numbers, but images, shapes, sounds, and sensations that carry deep emotional meaning. This is the symbolic language of the subconscious, and it speaks not in structured sentences, but in metaphors, in dreams, in sudden impressions, in the patterns that repeat in your life again and again without any obvious cause. The subconscious speaks in poetry, not prose, and when you begin to listen to that poetry, you begin to understand a deeper part of yourself that words alone cannot reach. You may not realize how often your subconscious uses symbols to communicate with you. A sudden image that flashes in your mind's eye, a repeated number you keep seeing, a feeling you associate with a specific color. Even your dreams, however nonsensical they may appear on the surface, are rich with layered meaning. The subconscious rarely tells you something directly. Instead, it offers you pieces: a door, a river, a broken clock, a flying animal. These symbols are not random. They are the mind's way of compressing vast emotional truths into compact, intuitive forms. Take, for example, the dream of falling. To the conscious mind, it may just be a meaningless jolt. But to the subconscious, it might represent a lack of control, fear of failure, or a recent loss of safety. The feeling of falling becomes the vessel through which the subconscious says, "Pay attention." Something inside you feels unstable. The meaning doesn't come from a dream dictionary. It comes from the emotional resonance it holds for you. Everyone has their own symbolic vocabulary, shaped by personal history, culture, and experience. A tree might mean stability to one person, grief to another. A staircase might represent progress or an overwhelming burden. This is why interpreting the subconscious isn't about solving a puzzle. It's about learning to feel what each image, sound, or symbol stirs within you. It's about sitting with it gently, asking, what does this remind me of? What part of me is trying to speak? The subconscious relies on symbols because it operates beneath language. Long before you could speak, you could feel. You could sense when something was safe or dangerous, warm or cold, comforting or unsettling. These early emotional impressions became the foundation of your inner world, and even now, they still guide your responses. Words came later, emotion came first. That's why symbolism is so powerful. It bypasses the logical filters of the conscious mind. It goes straight to the emotional core. A symbol can reach you in places that 1,000 explanations never could. It can remind you of something forgotten, awaken a dormant truth, or bring healing to a place too deep for words. Art, music, myth, and ritual have always served this function. They speak to the subconscious in its native tongue. A piece of music that moves you to tears might not have any clear message, yet it touches something ancient inside you. A story with a dragon, a hero, and a hidden treasure might seem fictional, but your subconscious sees in it your own struggle, your own courage, your own search for healing. These external symbols mirror your internal landscape, and in that reflection, you begin to recognize yourself. The symbolic mind is always active, even when you aren't aware of it. It shapes your decisions, your relationships, your creative impulses. It chooses certain clothes that make you feel strong. It avoids certain places that feel energetically heavy. It dreams up futures, not in blueprints, but in fragments and feelings. A certain house, a type of light, a name that repeats, all of it pointing towards something deeper than logic. Sometimes the subconscious sends symbols when you're stuck, when words have failed and emotion has gone unacknowledged. You may dream of being lost in a maze, or you may notice a specific animal appearing again and again in your imagination. These aren't distractions, they are messengers. They are offering you a different kind of truth. And the more you learn to work with these symbols, not to decode them like formulas, but to feel them like poetry, the more you create a relationship with your inner world. You become a translator of your own emotional life. You learn to say, I don't fully understand this yet, but I feel its weight. I sense its meaning. And that is enough to begin. Journaling can help uncover this symbolism. Drawing, free writing, paying attention to the metaphors you naturally use when you speak. We say things like carrying a heavy burden, walking on thin ice, being in the dark, without even realizing these are symbols for our emotional state. The subconscious offers them up constantly, hoping we'll notice the pattern, trace it back, and finally hear what it's trying to say. Even your fears often come wrapped in symbols. You may not be afraid of failure itself, but of what failure represents. Rejection, exposure, shame. You may not be afraid of change, but of the unknown symbol it carries. When you unpack the symbol, you soften the fear. You understand the real story beneath it. The symbolic language of the subconscious is not meant to confuse you. It's meant to give you access to truth that's too large, too layered, or too tender for simple explanation. It gives you a way to hold complexity without having to break it apart. A single image can say 1,000 things. A single moment of resonance can bring clarity more powerful than hours of analysis. And if you let it, this language becomes a quiet guide. You begin to feel drawn to certain colors when you need comfort. You notice recurring shapes in your sketches. You speak more intentionally, knowing that even the metaphors you use shape your internal reality. You become fluent in the language of your own subconscious, and in doing so, you begin to walk through the world with more intuition, more gentleness, more understanding of the quiet patterns that shape who you are and who you're still becoming. Somewhere deep inside you, beneath the layers of noise and routine, there is a quiet place where your inner beliefs live. These beliefs, many of them unspoken and unnoticed, act as silent instructions that shape the way you see yourself, others, and the world. They were formed long ago, not through logic, but through experience, through repetition, through the emotional tone of your life. And the more they were repeated, whether by others or by yourself, the more deeply they settled into the soil of your subconscious. Repetition is the language of the subconscious mind. It doesn't respond quickly to single thoughts or fleeting affirmations. It listens to what is said over and over. It listens to what is emotionally charged. It listens to what feels familiar. The more a message is repeated, especially when paired with emotion, the more likely it is to be accepted, absorbed, and acted upon automatically. And this is why reprogramming your subconscious doesn't happen in an instant. It happens slowly, gently, and through small rituals of repeated intention. Kindness, surprisingly, is the most powerful tool for reprogramming. Not force, not pressure, not demanding yourself to change overnight, but kindness, offered consistently, especially in moments when the old pattern would have you shrink. It's easy to speak kindly to yourself when you feel proud, but the subconscious pays closer attention to how you speak to yourself when you feel ashamed, afraid, or rejected. Those are the moments it's listening most closely. Those are the moments when new beliefs can either take root or wither. Imagine speaking to yourself the way you would to a child who is trying their best, not with false praise, but with presence, with patience, with reminders that they are still worthy, even when they stumble, that they are still loved, even when they fail. When you offer yourself this tone over and over, the subconscious begins to loosen its grip on old stories. Stories that say you're not enough. Stories that say you're only valuable if you're perfect. Stories that once protected you, but now only limit you. Each day offers small opportunities to rewrite those stories. Every time you look in the mirror and soften your gaze, every time you pause before a self-critical thought and replace it with understanding, every time you allow yourself rest without guilt. These moments may seem insignificant, but the subconscious is watching. It notices the patterns. It begins to adjust its expectations. It starts to believe a new version of what's possible for you. Some people use affirmations for this purpose. Gentle, present tense statements repeated daily. I am safe. I am enough. I am healing. I am worthy of love. But for affirmations to work, they must be paired with feeling. They must be believable, or at least reachable. If you don't believe the words, the subconscious won't either. But you can always soften the phrasing. I am learning to feel safe. I am open to the idea that I am enough. I am exploring what healing feels like. These statements create a bridge between your current belief and the one you're moving toward. They leave space for growth, for exploration, for sincerity. Visualization can also aid this process. The subconscious responds vividly to imagery. When you visualize yourself moving through the world with confidence, calm, or joy, and when you feel those states in your body as you visualize them, you're offering the subconscious a new reference point. It doesn't care if it's real in the external world. If it feels real inside, it starts to rewire accordingly. Visualization is not fantasy, it's rehearsal. It's giving your system a preview of the life you're trying to step into. Repetition also occurs in the language you hear from others. If your environment constantly reinforces doubt, fear, or judgment, those messages may quietly reinforce the very patterns you're trying to undo. That's why curating your input through books, conversations, media, and community can make a profound difference. The subconscious absorbs more than we realize. It echoes what surrounds us. And when the echo becomes one of possibility, healing, and softness, that becomes the new rhythm within. Yet none of this works without consistency. The subconscious doesn't change just because you had a breakthrough. It changes because you kept showing up, day after day, moment after moment, especially when it felt like nothing was happening, especially when the old beliefs tried to pull you back. It is in those moments that your kindness matters most, because every time you choose a new response, no matter how small, you're creating a new groove in the mind. You're creating a new normal. Think of it like learning a language. At first, the new words feel awkward. You forget them easily. You default to your old vocabulary. But over time, with practice, the new words become familiar. They roll off your tongue. They feel like home. The subconscious is the same. It resists at first. It hesitates. But eventually, it adapts. It embraces the rhythm that has been repeated with care. And in time, that rhythm becomes who you are. Not because you forced yourself to change, but because you gently return to what was always waiting beneath the noise. A truer version of you. A softer voice. A deeper truth that only needed to be remembered again and again until it finally felt real. There is a quiet journey happening within you, one that often goes unnoticed, but shapes the very essence of who you are. This journey is about discovery, not of new places, but of parts of yourself that have been hidden, forgotten, or overshadowed by life's noise. Your true self is like a seed beneath the soil, waiting patiently for the right conditions to sprout and bloom. And the path to finding this self is gentle, mysterious, and deeply personal. When you look at yourself through the lens of daily life, it's easy to see only the surface: roles you play, tasks you complete, habits you maintain. But beneath that surface lies a vast inner landscape, rich with feeling, memory, desire, and potential. Sometimes this inner world feels familiar and warm. Other times it feels foreign or even frightening because parts of it have been ignored or suppressed for so long. Finding yourself is not about becoming someone new. It's about peeling back layers of expectation, judgment, fear, and distraction that have accumulated over time. It's about returning to what was always there, even when you didn't know to look for it. It's about listening deeply to the whispers of your subconscious, the parts of you that speak in symbols, dreams, and sensations rather than words. The subconscious holds your authentic self in trust. It guards your essence through all the chaos of life, but it also longs to reveal itself, to be seen, accepted, and integrated. The challenge is that this revelation cannot be forced. It cannot be rushed or demanded. It unfolds in moments of stillness, reflection, and courage. You might find glimpses of yourself in unexpected places, a sudden feeling of joy during a quiet walk, a wave of peace when you close your eyes, an intuitive sense of what you truly want that contradicts what you think you should want. These moments are invitations. They are signals that your inner self is reaching out, eager to be known. The journey to yourself often requires unlearning. It asks you to question the beliefs and narratives that have shaped your identity. Who told you who you should be? What fears have you inherited? What parts of yourself have you hidden to fit in, to be safe, or to be loved? These questions can be uncomfortable because they uncover vulnerability. But vulnerability is also the doorway to freedom. It is in embracing vulnerability that you begin to heal the wounds that have kept you separate from your true self. You start to see that the parts of you once rejected, the fears, the doubts, the pain, are not enemies but guides. They hold valuable lessons. They are markers pointing toward growth. Self-discovery is also an act of compassion. It requires kindness toward yourself, especially when you encounter your shadows. The shadows are not flaws. They are unacknowledged parts that want integration. When you approach them without judgment, you create space for transformation. You tell your subconscious that it is safe to lower its defenses, to soften, to trust. This process often unfolds in cycles. There may be times of clarity when you feel connected to your inner truth, followed by times of confusion or doubt. This ebb and flow is natural. It mirrors the rhythms of nature, seasons of growth and rest, light and dark, emergence and withdrawal. Patience is essential. The true self cannot be rushed. It reveals itself in its own time, through its own rhythms. Practices like journaling, meditation, creative expression, and mindful movement can support this journey. They provide containers where the inner world can emerge safely. They allow the subconscious to speak in its language, through images, symbols, sensations, and feelings. Listening to these expressions with openness strengthens your relationship with yourself. Community also plays a role. When you are seen and accepted by others, it echoes the acceptance you seek within. Safe relationships mirror the inner safety necessary for self-discovery. They remind you that you are not alone in your journey, that your authentic self is worthy of connection and love. Finding yourself is not a destination, but a lifelong dance. Each step reveals more of who you are and who you are becoming. It requires courage to keep stepping into the unknown parts of yourself. But with each step, the path becomes clearer, the burden lighter, and the light within grows brighter. And as you walk this path, you begin to notice a subtle but profound shift. The inner noise quiets. The external pressures lose their hold. You start to live from a place of alignment, a place where your actions, your values, and your feelings harmonize. This harmony is the song of your true self coming home. There is a part of your mind that often feels like a shadow, hidden, mysterious, sometimes frightening. This shadow is made up of the thoughts, feelings, and desires you have pushed away or denied. It contains the aspects of yourself that you might not want to acknowledge, the anger, the shame, the jealousy, the vulnerability that feels unsafe to show. Yet this shadow is not something to fear or reject. It is a vital part of your subconscious, holding keys to your wholeness and growth. The shadow forms early in life as you learn what is acceptable and what is not. You receive messages, some spoken, many unspoken, about which parts of yourself are good and which parts are bad. Over time, you start to hide the bad parts to avoid rejection or punishment. But hiding doesn't make these parts disappear. Instead, they move into the subconscious, shaping your inner world from the shadows. Because the shadow contains rejected parts, it often carries strong emotional energy. It can influence your behavior in ways you don't understand, pushing you towards self-sabotage, emotional outbursts, or repeated patterns that feel destructive. These shadow-driven reactions can feel like they come from outside you, as if you're losing control, but in truth, they are the subconscious trying to communicate, to protect, to survive. Engaging with the shadow requires courage and compassion. It means turning toward what you've long avoided. It means listening without judgment to the parts of yourself that have been silenced. And it means recognizing that the shadow is not the enemy. It is a guardian of authenticity waiting to be integrated. When you begin to bring shadow aspects into conscious awareness, you start a process of healing and transformation. You see that these parts often carry valuable messages, unmet needs, unexpressed creativity, hidden strength. By acknowledging and embracing your shadow, you reclaim energy that was previously spent on hiding and resistance. You become more whole. Shadow work is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming real. It's about inviting your inner contradictions to coexist, to be seen, heard, and held. When the shadow is integrated, the sharp edges soften. Fear gives way to understanding. Shame turns into acceptance. This integration also changes how you relate to others. The qualities you once denied in yourself may appear in others, triggering judgment or rejection. When you recognize these as reflections of your own shadow, you begin to respond with empathy rather than defensiveness. Relationships deepen. Compassion grows, The journey into the shadow is often challenging. It can bring up discomfort, confusion, and vulnerability, but it is also deeply liberating. You begin to move beyond reactive patterns. You discover a deeper sense of peace and authenticity. You no longer need to hide to be loved. You begin to love yourself as you are, light and dark, whole and imperfect. Practices like journaling, meditation, therapy, or creative expression can support this process. They create safe spaces where shadow aspects can emerge and be witnessed. They help translate the language of the subconscious into conscious understanding. Ultimately, embracing your shadow is an act of self-love. It honors the full complexity of your being. It allows the subconscious and conscious minds to align, creating a foundation for genuine growth and transformation. As you continue this work, you may notice subtle shifts. Patterns that once controlled you begin to loosen. Emotional intensity becomes manageable. You feel more grounded, more connected, more alive. The shadow does not disappear. It becomes a source of wisdom, depth, and strength, guiding you toward a more integrated and authentic life. There is a curious trap many minds fall into, a psychological loop that keeps you feeling stuck, lost, or disconnected from your own potential. It's a pattern that seems invisible, yet it exerts a quiet but relentless pull on your thoughts and actions. This trap lives in the subconscious, where old fears and beliefs have nested so deeply that you don't even realize they are shaping your present moment. It's the trap of endless searching without finding, of longing without knowing what you truly want. At its core, this psychological trap is about attachment to ideas, identities, and outcomes that no longer serve you. Your subconscious clings to familiar stories about who you are and what your life should look like. These stories were once protective, helping you navigate a complex world, but over time, they become rigid scripts, narrowing your experience and blocking new possibilities. You may notice this trap when you feel restless despite having many options, when you question your path repeatedly but never commit, when you chase after external validation or achievements, only to feel emptier afterward. This cyclical searching creates exhaustion, confusion, and sometimes despair. The subconscious keeps you busy with questions and doubts because it fears the unknown more than it fears dissatisfaction. This trap often arises from a disconnect between your conscious desires and your subconscious programming. Your conscious mind might crave freedom, creativity, or peace, but the subconscious is still holding on to fears of failure, rejection, or inadequacy. It doesn't know how to reconcile these conflicting messages, so it defaults to control, trying to predict and prepare for every possible outcome. This control manifests as overthinking, indecision, and self-criticism. The paradox is that the more you try to escape this trap by pushing harder, the more entrenched it becomes. Force breeds resistance. Anxiety grows. The subconscious interprets the struggle as danger and tightens its grip. You may try new habits, new goals, new philosophies, but the underlying pattern remains, searching for something outside yourself to fix what feels broken inside. Breaking free from this trap requires a different approach. It begins with awareness, recognizing the cycle for what it is without judgment, seeing that the constant search is a form of avoidance, a way to distract from deeper emotions or uncertainties. It means accepting that not knowing is part of the journey, not a failure. This acceptance creates space. Space to feel your emotions without needing immediate answers. Space to rest from the relentless drive to figure everything out. Space to listen to the subtle whispers of your subconscious that are often drowned out by noise and urgency. In this space, you can begin to reconnect with your inner compass, not the loud voice of desire or fear, but the quiet knowing beneath them. This compass doesn't point toward a fixed destination. It points toward alignment, toward choices that feel coherent with your deepest self in the present moment. Practices such as mindfulness, journaling, and gentle movement can support this reconnection. They slow the mind and open the heart, allowing buried feelings and truths to surface safely. As you become more comfortable with uncertainty, the subconscious no longer needs to create the illusion of control through constant searching. Over time, the trap loosens. The endless cycle of doubt and searching gives way to a rhythm of curiosity and trust. You learn to respond to life's questions, not with anxiety, but with openness. You begin to see that the journey itself holds meaning, not just the answers you seek. This shift doesn't mean all confusion disappears. Doubt may still arise, but it no longer controls you. You become more skilled at holding paradox, knowing that clarity and mystery can coexist. The subconscious learns that it is safe to relax, to let go of the need for certainty. And in that letting go, something remarkable happens. The paths you once searched for outside begin to appear within. The answers you sought in achievement or approval reveal themselves as presence, acceptance, and peace. The psychological trap that once held you captive becomes a doorway, an invitation to deeper freedom, authenticity, and wholeness. There is a strange sensation that creeps in when you least expect it. A heaviness, a shadow, a restlessness that seems to come from nowhere. Often, it's accompanied by a feeling of being overwhelmed, disconnected, or lost in a swirl of thoughts and emotions you don't fully understand. This is the subtle influence of your shadow self, the hidden parts of your subconscious that carry not only pain and fear, but also unacknowledged desires and impulses. The shadow is powerful because it operates beneath awareness, shaping your behavior in ways that feel automatic, sometimes uncontrollable. The shadow self is not a villain. It is not a monster lurking in the dark. It is a part of you that has been hidden away, usually because it was judged, rejected, or misunderstood. When you were young, you may have been told that certain feelings were bad or wrong. Anger, sadness, jealousy, or fear. You learned to hide these parts to be accepted, to avoid punishment, or simply to survive. But hiding does not make them disappear. It only pushes them into the subconscious, where they continue to influence you silently. Because the shadow lives in the subconscious, it often reveals itself through patterns that repeat in your life. Self-sabotage, compulsive behaviors, unexpected emotional outbursts, or the tendency to attract certain types of relationships. These patterns can feel confusing or frustrating because they seem to contradict your conscious intentions. You want peace, but find yourself in conflict. You want connection, but feel isolated. You want freedom, but feel trapped. Understanding the shadow requires courage and compassion. It means turning toward what you've been taught to avoid. It means recognizing that these hidden parts are not enemies, but parts of your whole self, yearning to be seen and healed. When you begin to acknowledge the shadow without judgment, you create a space where transformation can begin. This process often starts with awareness, noticing when you react in ways that don't feel like you, observing your triggers, your fears, your patterns, asking yourself, what part of me is speaking here? What is it trying to protect? What does it need? These questions open a dialogue between your conscious mind and your shadow, inviting integration rather than suppression. Shadow work is not about erasing darkness, it's about embracing complexity. It's about holding the light and the shadow together, seeing your wholeness rather than just fragments. And as you do this, the power of the shadow shifts. What once controlled you unconsciously becomes a source of insight, creativity, and strength. Many find that creative expression, art, writing, movement, can help give voice to the shadow. It speaks in symbols, in images, in feelings that may be difficult to express verbally. Allowing these expressions to flow without censorship is a way of honoring the shadow's language, which often bypasses logic and reaches directly to the heart. Therapeutic practices such as mindfulness, inner child work, or guided meditation also support shadow integration. They teach you to sit with discomfort, to feel without reacting, and to respond with kindness. Over time, the shadow softens. It no longer needs to shout or act out. It begins to trust that it can be part of your conscious experience without fear. Integration of the shadow transforms relationships as well. When you recognize and accept your own hidden parts, you become more compassionate toward others' shadows. You understand that everyone carries complexity beneath their surface. This awareness fosters empathy, reduces judgment, and deepens connection. The shadow does not disappear. It becomes part of your strength. It enriches your experience, adds depth to your empathy, and fuels your authenticity. By embracing the shadow, you step into a fuller expression of yourself, a person who is not afraid to be whole, to be imperfect, to be real. This journey is ongoing. There will be times when the shadow feels particularly strong, when old wounds resurface, and when fears seem to overwhelm. But with each step of awareness and acceptance, you build resilience. You create a new relationship with your inner world, one of trust, curiosity, and love. And as you continue to walk this path, the shadow becomes not a source of fear, but a companion, an inner guide pointing toward deeper truth, healing, and transformation. There is a phenomenon in human experience that often goes unnoticed, but holds profound implications for how we perceive time itself. It is the curious sensation that, as we grow older, the years seem to pass more quickly. The days blur into each other, and moments that once felt expansive now feel fleeting. This speeding up of time is not an illusion, but a complex interplay between our conscious mind, our subconscious processes, and the way our brain encodes memories. Our experience of time is deeply tied to memory. When we are young, everything is new, and the brain is busy encoding fresh information at an extraordinary rate. Novelty demands attention and creates rich, detailed memories. These abundant new experiences make time feel long and full because the mind is storing so many unique moments. The days feel stretched out because the brain is actively processing, learning, and cataloging. As we age, however, many experiences become routine and predictable. Familiarity means the brain conserves energy by encoding fewer details. When the mind encounters repetitive patterns, it processes them more efficiently, sometimes even on autopilot. While this efficiency is useful, it also means fewer new memories are formed. When the brain has fewer distinctive memories to recall, time feels compressed. The months and years seem to rush by because, looking back, there are fewer unique markers to distinguish one moment from another. This relationship between memory and time perception is one reason why children often report that summer vacations felt endless, while adults look back and feel they passed in the blink of an eye. The richness of new experiences creates a sense of spaciousness in time, whereas routine creates a sense of acceleration. Philosophers and psychologists have explored this phenomenon deeply. Henri Bergson, a French philosopher, distinguished between clock time, the objective measurement of seconds and minutes, and lived time, the subjective experience of duration. Lived time is elastic. It stretches and contracts based on attention, emotion, and memory. When you are deeply engaged, fully present, time seems to slow down. When you are distracted or disengaged, time seems to fly. The subconscious mind plays a vital role here. It governs much of your habitual attention and emotional processing, often outside of conscious awareness. When the subconscious holds you in a state of routine or distraction, you miss opportunities for novelty and deeper engagement. Your brain receives fewer signals of newness, fewer emotional imprints, and thus encodes fewer memorable moments. This dynamic explains why mindfulness and intentional presence are often recommended as antidotes to the speeding up of time. When you cultivate awareness, when you slow down to notice the details of your environment, the sensations in your body, the quality of your breath, you create fresh experiences even within familiar settings. You invite the subconscious to register new information, to heighten emotional resonance, and to enrich your memory. By slowing down and deepening your experience of the present moment, you stretch lived time. The days begin to feel fuller again because your brain has more to hold on to. Even simple activities, walking in nature, savoring a meal, engaging deeply in conversation, become anchors that create vivid memories and slow down your perception of time. Moreover, emotional intensity influences time perception. Moments of heightened emotion, whether joy, fear, awe, or sadness, tend to be encoded more richly. The subconscious tags these moments as important, ensuring they are stored with greater detail. This emotional coloring expands the felt duration of an experience. In contrast, emotional numbness or detachment can make time feel empty and swift. The relationship between memory, emotion, and time is a dance between the conscious and subconscious. Your conscious choices, how you direct your attention, how you engage with life, shape what the subconscious records. And the subconscious, through its filtering and prioritizing, shapes your overall sense of how time passes. Recognizing this interplay empowers you. You begin to see that while you cannot change clock time, you can influence lived time. By inviting novelty, by cultivating mindfulness, by embracing emotion, you encourage your subconscious to enrich your experience. You slow the rush and you deepen the now. This awareness also shifts your relationship with aging and the passage of life. Instead of feeling swept along by an uncontrollable current, you become an active participant in shaping the quality of your temporal experience. Each moment holds the potential to be more vivid, more meaningful, more expansive. And as you continue to practice this presence, allowing your subconscious to encounter fresh experiences and emotional depth, you create a life that feels more spacious, more connected, and more alive. Time ceases to be the enemy that slips away too quickly. Instead, it becomes a rhythm you can dance with, bending and stretching in harmony with your inner world. As we come to the close of this journey through the quiet power of your subconscious mind, take a moment to breathe deeply and feel the gentle unfolding within you. What we have explored together is not just knowledge to be stored, but an invitation to step into a deeper relationship with yourself. Your subconscious is not a distant mystery. It is a living, breathing part of you that works tirelessly, often unseen, to guide, protect, and shape your experience of life. Remember that this process is gentle and ongoing. Change doesn't come from force or urgency, but from kindness, patience, and consistent presence. Every thought you offer before sleep, every moment of stillness you create, every breath taken with awareness is a seed planted in the fertile soil of your inner world. Over time, these seeds grow into new patterns, new beliefs, new ways of being that align more closely with your true self. Wherever you are in the world tonight, know that this journey is shared by countless others, each quietly awakening to their own inner depths, learning to listen, to trust, and to heal. You are part of a vast, unseen tapestry of consciousness, all woven together by the same threads of hope, courage, and transformation. So as you step back into your day or drift gently toward rest, carry with you the awareness that your subconscious is always with you, working in your favor. It is the quiet ally in your corner, ready to support your growth whenever you choose to listen. Thank you for sharing this time with me. If you feel called, come back to this space again and again. Let the insight settle. Let the gentle power of your subconscious continue its work. And above all, be gentle with yourself, for you are on a path of profound discovery, and that path is a sacred one. Until next time, may your nights be restful, your dreams clear, and your inner world ever blossoming.